going on?
Dude, I'm trying to get jacked up because Jess said this is going to be the most intense podcast yet. And Cameron was just talking about it in 2 podcasts ago about how, if I don't get this done, then my whole family's going to die. So I'm just trying to bring that in.
Jesus.
You remember that?
No.
Remember Cameron was talking about, he's like, you guys ever do
This
that?
is
Like,
a dream you had, Asif.
no, it's like if I don't get this shot, then like something bad's going to happen.
Oh,
Yeah.
Or like that kind of thing. So
Nice. All right. Well, hey, like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, share with people you don't like, share with everyone.
I'm not going
Join
to
the
do it
Facebook
this
group.
time because Cameron hasn't said it yet.
Especially if you don't
I only
like,
do it when Cameron says it.
Cameron,
like it if you don't like it.
Perfect.
Give us 2 thumbs up if you don't like it.
Yeah, spam it across the internet. And
I think if you
Make
give 2
sure
thumbs
you
up, it just
tell
cancels out.
everybody else why you don't like it and share the link so that they can watch it and say they don't like it as well.
yeah, spread some
Yeah.
shit about us.
Comment how you're not a follower, but you just follow your feelings.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
that's a good one.
perfect.
What are we talking about today?
Oh, we're supposed to talk on this?
Well, welcome back,
Cameron
Asif.
had a book.
Asif's
Oh.
back. Asif
You
is
wrote a book?
back.
As if.
I'm reading a book. I just got it a few days ago or whatever. And it is good, man. It's like one of these kind of books where you can just open it up and just start reading and you're like, wow.
That page is going to slap, eh?
Yeah, it's
I mean,
like anything. You just randomly open it up and you're like, oh, this is cool.
You shared some really cool pages with us privately.
It's called Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Power. And I really thought when I ordered
Who's it by? Who's it by?
Rajiv Malhotra is an Indian guy.
I think you're just.
I came
assuming.
across it because what?
I think you're just assuming that. You don't know if he's Indian or not.
I do know. Sorry,
Oh, yeah.
Native American.
There we go.
If you read the book,
First
then you'll
Nation.
know.
Actual India. But I came across it because I've been watching Russell Brand more lately. And he's been doing interviews with I forget her name, but it's this Indian woman, and she's always talking shit about Bill Gates. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, she's like an older Indian woman.
Yeah, but I just don't remember her name. But anyways, I saw something she did with this guy, and then I looked him up and I saw he has this book. And when I got it, I kind of just expected it to be kind of like just, I don't know why I thought this, but it's like if you read the what was that one by Klaus Schwab? Oh, the COVID-19 book, the Great Reset book. It was just like reading some kind of corporate memo. It was just like, ugh. So I don't know why I thought it would be kind of like that, but it's not. It's really good.
Her name's like
And-
Vandana Shiva.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Vandana Shiva, yeah. And anyway, so I started reading it, and it's really good. It's really good. He talks about, so it's about artificial intelligence, but a lot of the books I read on AI, it's more just talking about how, oh, it's going to replace lawyers, or it's going to replace marketing, or what. It's more about the economic impact. But this book is really, it's like, I think he wrote it to get Indians to wake up and be like, hey, we're caught between the US and China. And when it comes to AI, we're going to get screwed. We're basically going to be their slaves if we don't stand up. And it was really interesting too. He made this one point about how India has their own sort of philosophical traditions, right? Like Vedanta. And it's interesting, before I started studying Destiny, that was the thing I had been studying the most heavily, which was Vedanta.
What is that?
And it's just the Indian sort of religious, philosophical, mystical tradition.
Does
And
that include like Hinduism and the Vedas and all that?
Or is it more like
I suppose so. I don't know if Hinduism is a part of that. I'm not really sure. I'm not too familiar with what
let's get a
Hinduism
word
is.
definition.
But like I was right before I started studying Destiny, I was watching a lot of Krishnamurti, of J. Krishnamurti, and I had read, I forget the name of the author, but it was like the crest jewel of discernment or something like that. But I had been reading some Vedantic works, and also like Huxley and a lot of these guys, their ideas were more like based in Vedanta. And this guy even makes this point, is like a lot of the theories of quantum mechanics were based in or similar to Vedanta. So, oh yeah, there was I read this really cool book. I should get that book. It was a conversations between Jay Krishnamurti and David Bohm, who's an American physicist. And they were talking about quantum mechanics and physics in the context of non-dualism, Vedanta philosophy, and so forth, right? Maybe somebody, can you look it up? Like,
What is
how would you
Vedanta?
describe Vedanta? Yeah.
Yeah, I looked it up. It's like the doctrine based on the Upanishads, which is the religious, isn't it the religious text within India?
It's one of
What's
the
interesting. Yeah.
six
ahead.
schools of Hindu, and it's Vedanta supposedly means the end of the Vedas. So it's like, I guess it deals with knowledge more towards the, I don't know, I guess I don't really.
He makes this really cool point about how he was studying computer science. He got into computer science when he was younger and started studying that and so forth. And then it's all about algorithms, right? So algorithms are basically sets of instructions. It's what we normally call a program, right? But another word for this algorithm. And he was explaining how the way people perceive consciousness is that it's algorithmic. In other words, it can be broken down. It can't, there's no real fundamental unit. It's just algorithms, which can be broken down into more algorithms, which can be broken down to more algorithms. And so part of the book is kind of taking the whole transhumanism thing to task and saying that it's like, the way that transhumanists actually look at humanity and life is that you're just a computer program in essence. And so that's why you can be mapped into a computer, right? And one of the things that it's cool about what he was explaining with Vedanta, which is a very similar point within Destiny, and it's not that Destiny has come up with its own philosophy of the world. That's not what it is. So you'll find similarities in things like Vedanta or Buddhism or Christianity. It's just that all of those things have in some way been corrupted and things added to that end up, whatever the philosophy is, ends up still being a control mechanism, right?
Hey, I want to read a quote from Bernard real quick.
Sure.
Based on what you just said. I found this in my old notes. I was just kind of going through them earlier today. He says, "Do I speak anything that is new? As I said, all the knowledge is available, but it is useless because it is not being lived."
Right.
So there's many times where he mentions it's like, this isn't like secret stuff. This is just the compilation or
Right.
the final point of it.
But the problem is when you take something like Christianity or Islam or anything, which has some of these points in them. So it's not like Destiny is anything new per se in terms of the fundamentals of it. It's just that it strips
What's
away.
cool about it is that it's taken all of the best parts of everything and then put it together, which has never been done.
It's like, let's remove the unnecessary stuff. That's not just unnecessary, but actually is diluting it or causing you to not be able to live it effectively. Like we talked about this before, like in Christianity, the idea that, you should treat your neighbor as yourself, like give unto another as you want to receive, right? Which makes sense. But then at the same time, it's like, I can never be like Jesus. And so you like handicapping yourself from ever actually being able to fully implement any system that would allow for us to truly give as we want to receive and actually truly receive as we want.
That's so funny when you say that. And I know I keep coming back to this, but this is just currently what I've been working on. Give as you'd like to receive. What would you have wanted your mother to do before conceiving you? Like, how would you have wanted her to prep and
That's
prepare
cool.
a good environment for you to come into the world and be as effective as possible? And
Yeah.
that's what I'm literally walking right now.
I wish my mom had techno tutor before I was born.
But it's
It
and
would've
it's
saved a lot of trouble.
it's in a lot of different layers though. Like it's a very multi-dimensional thing because it's not only the environment that I'm creating around us, so the physical environment, so prepping to move to our new house and knowing how
Mm.
that's going to set up and how that's going to flow perfectly with then bearing a child. But then it's also the environment internally. So it's both how stable I am, like how much the ego or the conscious mind has, how much control it has. Because if I am not fully directing myself, then that's going to be conditioned into my child, whether in the womb or in its first few years. And so it's creating an environment where I'm directing myself from that standpoint, as well as being present with my physical body and knowing I'm deprived in this, like, let me stay hydrated, let me have all the nutrients I need, the supplements that I need, and all those things to create that physical point of it can literally have all the parts it needs to compile into a human being inside of my womb, you know? And so like, there's so many different layers to that, but it's something that everyone should be considering in any situation, not just in birthing a child, when interacting with Mitchell. Like, I'm thinking about, what's my back chat, you know? Do I have any reactions to him? Am I fully present with him? Am I considering him? Also, when I make his food, am I considering his physical body? Am I considering what he physically needs? With Teddy, with your neighbors, with the random person down the street. I mean, it's really relevant also with yourself, in interacting with yourself and just being present with yourself throughout the day. And so give to yourself as you want to receive for yourself. So if you want to have nice teeth that you don't have to wear dentures when you're older, then floss your teeth every day and brush your teeth twice a day and take care of them. Look at them, observe them, see how they're doing. So if you have a bunch of blemishes on your skin and you can tell there's something that's going on, whether it's with your diet, lack of water, or maybe you never clean your face, whatever it is, where something is going on with the skin on your face, give as you'd like to receive. Like, look into it, try out different things, maybe just try another cup of water every day or something like that, where it's being totally present and giving to yourself and giving to everything else around you as you would truly like to receive.
It's just so fascinating though, because people have such low self-esteem that like they can't even like see themselves as worthy of that type of like receiving that value or giving that value to themselves. It's unfortunate, but it's like, because if you're all screwed up on the inside and you're trying to give as you want to receive, well, one, your giving is not really going to be that effective, and two, yeah, your ability to receive it's all going to be limited by how you see yourself, because you likely don't see yourself as equal to others or equal to, yeah, like all types of people, or even, you know, go back to then all these texts and everything about, you know, religion and the Upanishads and philosophy and all that. It's like, even this, I'm looking up Upanishad, and it comes from a Sanskrit word that translates into English to mean sitting at the feet of or sitting down near. Where what would that mean if it's like sitting at the feet of? It's almost like you're a servant of something greater.
Right.
That's at least how I see that. And so that comes back to this whole thing of seeing the human as just, oh, I'm not as good as something else out there. There's something greater than me. And that's where the whole thing behind religion really screws us. Well, we screw ourselves.
Yeah, it's the inequality part.
Yeah.
One thing that was really fascinating with Drake, you want to share?
Yeah, because I think I was on a call with no, actually I was watching Kian interviewing Bruce and Kristen, and like Kian brings up this like really great point of like, if you don't know that much, like your circle of knowledge, let's say, is about this size, right? Then the things that you're aware of that you don't know about, like what's on the edge, is a very small edge that you're aware of that you don't know about. But as you gain more and more knowledge, like then you realize there's so much more around you that you don't have knowledge of, that like you have to go deeper on.
I love that. Yeah.
Right. and it's a really great metaphor or analogy, because I'm considering what Jess is just saying, as far as like with the low self-esteem point and with like not being present here within your own body. I'm reading a book that Mitch recommended like a year ago, Deep Work, Cal Newport, right? And I just started it, but man, is it so good, because it really outlines how distracted we are as people, where everything that we're doing is so shallow. Like we don't get to dive deep on anything really. We don't focus even on ourselves. We don't focus, and like it seems like a new problem, where it seems like it's coming from social media, and it's just that's keeping us from doing that. But if you really consider it, it's something that has been going on for a very long time within our society, where even just within our own minds, like just looking at it from that starting point of the technology of our own minds, where we'll have a thought come up and then it'll like just throw us completely off track from whatever we're focused on or trying to focus on. And it'll just run this loop where we get distracted by all these like menacing thoughts that come up one after the other. And we don't actually spend the time with ourselves to focus and do like the self-forgiveness process, or really just investigating ourselves, right? Investigating what's around us. We, instead of doing that, we allow ourselves to be distracted almost like 24/7 with really shallow thoughts and really surface level. And that's how you participate in society. You have to be shallow and surface level.
Now, what I see in that and how it relates back to some of the things that Cameron shared in that book before this podcast, that it was such a fascinating concept that all we are, the only thing that we are, is just like a bunch of patterns, a bunch of algorithms, a bunch of like input output, right? And the competing concept is, I mean, how would you say they describe it in the book? Because they're talking about the idealistic kind of point of view versus the.
Well, the point was he was contrasting that with the Vedantic view, which is they have this concept called Atman, which is
right,
basically the self. And so even though it's not fully, it's sort of like, in a way, I guess people would think of it as kind of mysterious or something. But my point was about how similar that is in concept to destiny, when you understand the kind of trinity of who we are in this world. It's like you have a body, you have a mind, but then there's you as a being. And so that would be the self. And it's interesting because in our current society, everything is being, when I say current society, I mean like mainstream, what's being pushed in the media, social media and so forth, is there is no self really. There's just all of the things, all of the algorithmic aspects that defines yourself.
So can you put that into like, well, if I could put it into simpler words, it's just like, what, I don't know, are you extroverted? Are you introverted? What identity group are you part of?
Yeah,
kind of just
what's your
breaking it
gender
down.
that you choose, race, preferences,
Cameron,
music that you like, all those things.
Can you describe the difference between what typical society views a soul as compared to, you explained this, one of the three parts is the self?
But the being, the difference between the being and the soul. I know a lot of people get
that. Yeah, it's a challenging one because a lot of people don't have the context for it. But what people are thinking they're referring to as the self is closer to who you are as a being. It's just that who you are as a being, it doesn't have memories. Or in other words, memories is just information and data that you've associated with who you are. So for example, when you study the history of destiny, especially this is all explained, is that the soul is not who you are. It was a memory storage device, just like a USB key or a CD or a hard drive. It was a way to magnetically contain information. And so when you would go through life on Earth, you would accumulate experiences and lessons, and then that would be recorded into your soul, and then that would be put into a database. And then so it was kind of like the record of like how you're progressing along your spiritual path, which was really just, people define that as a good thing, but it was really just your obedience to the system as it exists.
And I would
So
say
it's kind of like,
it probably talks a little, I don't know this because that's kind of doing them in conjunction, but I think it talks a little bit like quite specifically about it in the history of mankind.
yeah, maybe that's, I probably just got wrong.
Yeah. But it's such a fascinating point because it's like, I didn't, when I was first studying Destiny, I didn't realize how big a deal it is and how far off we are. I thought it was all like very, I guess like underlying points. But if you look at it very even like what we say and what we literally think is right, because a lot of the times people want to do good, but they just are uneducated about what would actually be good or best, right? It ends up creating consequences. But there's the other side of it where it's like, for example, a good example of this is thinking that, and I think we all had this at a certain point of like, at the end of my life, it's all about the experiences that I've accumulated, being able to reflect on all the good memories and all that. But what we don't realize is placing value on that is the problem, which is actually valuing kind of like your soul, because that's the reference point of what your soul is in essence used for.
It's like, I see this happen a lot. Somebody was making this point about like the Neuralink, for example, right? You'll notice when it's promoted, it's always like, and researchers hope that this will be helpful for people who have spinal cord injuries, that they'll be able to regain use of their limbs through this Neuralink implant. And it's like, yeah, but that's not why they're doing it. That's just the way they market it. So if you don't look at it in any way as sort of a sinister kind of, because the thing is, most people's reaction to having a microchip implant into your brain would be like, fuck that. But then it's like, but this will help people with spinal cord injuries regain the ability to walk. You're like, well, okay, I mean, I shouldn't push back too hard on it, because then it's like, I don't care about these crippled people or something, right? And so the reason I brought that up is because that's kind of like the same thing as a soul, in the sense that it's marketed to us as, no, it's for your spiritual progress. It's who you are. It's God gave it to you. It's all these great, wonderful things. But in reality, it's like God put a recording device in you to make sure you're doing what he wants and not what he doesn't want.
It's like this, like the China surveillance state.
Well, and that's what I was looking at as I'm reading this book. And he's talking about, for example, I mean, it's so funny because I was watching this interview with one of the lead singers from Devo, which is like an American, like kind of punk rock band sort of. And it was from like 1994 or something, or 1997. And the guy was talking about how, actually, no, this was a different interview. It was from recently, but he was talking about how they wanted to, in the beginning of the band, they had these like crazy ideas for concerts. And he was like, back in the 70s, there was all this talk about the government doing research on sonic weapons and studying how you could use frequencies to physiologically impulse people. And like, there was certain frequencies that if you had the right frequency, it would give people orgasms. And there was certain frequencies, very low frequencies, that would make you like lose control of your bowels. So he was like, we wanted to do concerts with Devo where people would come and we would do like calisthenics in this big field. And then we would play a note that would give everybody instantaneous orgasms. And then we'd play another note where they would all just shit themselves. And then we'd have to clean it up afterwards. And it was just like insane, right? But
This
it was
is
funny.
An idea they had, or they actually tried to do it?
They did. I don't think they actually tried. It was
Okay.
like, he's kind of like, they were just thinking way out there of like what you could do with sounds and things like that, because they're experimental with that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because just before I watched that video, I think they're totally unrelated, I was watching something on YouTube about, there's been like 29 CIA agents who have reported being the victims of directed energy attacks, to where it's like they have brain damage and like actual scar tissue and stuff in their brain, and they're saying, and there's no other evidence of how they were attacked or whatever. And this is like recently, right? And
Dang.
why did I bring that up?
That's
Because
just crazy.
shit, he's under the
here's why. Because in this book, if I find the thing, I'll show you, or I'll read it. But in this book, he was talking about how the technology is already being developed. What's also really cool about this book, I would highly suggest anybody read it. It is not a conspiracy theory type book. Like, you'll read books that are written by people who don't know what they're talking about, or they're not experts in a field, and they're sort of putting things together based on their sort of conspiracy bias and like making it all fit that thing. That's not what this guy's doing. Like, this is a computer scientist who's like looked at all of the things that are going on and is trying to speak to, you know, Indians, like policymakers, researchers, professors, and being like, we need to up our game when it comes to AI, because here's what's coming down in terms of what's actually being developed. So it's more of that kind of a book than a trying to blame anybody for anything. He's just saying, this is what's going on. We need to step up because we're losing the AI battle, basically. That's why he calls it the 5 battlegrounds, right? Like, he's trying to tell Indians, like, we need to win on these battlegrounds. So anyways, he was talking about the technologies that are being developed. And as soon as I say this, everyone's going to be like, oh, well, yeah, obviously. Where it's like apps that, because, okay, right now we have phones, right? And then we have the wearables like your smartwatches and things like that, where it's on you all the time, but you can take it off. And these are with you all the time, but you can turn them off and things, right? And he said the next thing that's coming is the implants, where it's implanted into your body and you can never turn it off. It's always with you. It's always monitoring. It's always on, right? And that's like Neuralink, which is a mainstream thing now, right? But he was saying is what they're developing is apps where the technology interacts with your neurophysiology, and it will be able to literally give you an instantaneous orgasm, right? It will also be able to cause you neurological pain. So think of like when you're on Facebook and you get the like and that dopamine hit versus you get the angry comment or whatever it is, and then you get like the negative thing. This would be like the apps would be able to trigger those types of things in a person. And he was explaining how people will just turn to them for like instant gratification all the time and becomes completely addicted to it. And it's kind of like, obviously, right? Obviously, that's what's going to happen. But what's interesting about it is, and the point is, it's all going to be AI driven. Right.
See, Cameron, I think you're totally taking for granted the point that people aren't really thinking that far ahead, that the logical conclusion of going down the path of just doing things for feelings equals everyone's just sitting in a room.
Well, but the evidence that people are already doing this is already here.
Yeah. Which is
right.
worth,
people already
look
at porn all day long just to get
right.
off.
Exactly. Porn is a great example. And the thing is, like, I was just reading this while I was kind of flipping through it. I wish I could get back to, here it is. He was talking about, he was talking about the Kindle reader. He said, at first glance, Amazon's Kindle e-reader, and this was written in 2021, by the way, this is published this year. The e-reader appears to be a benign passive system. Unbeknownst to users, however, it monitors which part of a book you spent more time reading, on which page you took a break, what definitions you looked up, what you highlighted, and other silent metrics.
It knows you.
Okay, that's obvious, right? Of course it's doing that. Of course they're doing that. If they can measure that, of course they're doing that. It says in the future, with upgraded facial recognition and biometric monitoring, Kindle will be able to record what makes you happy, sad, or angry while you're reading. With that information, it'll be able to select books for you to read and might even customize a book that will be appropriate in each set of circumstances.
Oh my God, it's going to write books for you. Holy fuck.
So in other words, even the idea of like a thing that's in you that gives you an orgasm, like it's reading you, it's knowing what you like, it's monitoring that, and it's able to then put a sentence together that you're like, whoa.
So you're saying whether it's a physical implanted device that is triggering the dopamine receptors, or it's just the technology that you're already interacting with, already picking up on what.
Isn't that why people watch movies?
Exactly. Right.
Because they want to feel this thing, and you're always looking for that movie or that book or that music or whatever that gives you the most something that you're looking for. And So this idea of artificial intelligence sort of doing all of that and playing into that, it sounds like there's the kind of person who's like aware of it but doesn't understand the solution, and so they just get angry about it, and they're like, oh, these big tech assholes doing this to all of us. But it's like, they're just, your ego is already that thing.
Like
It's
imagine
using your mind as a way of observing what you like and don't like, and then using it to manipulate you constantly to produce more energy for it so it can continue to exist. Just like an AI system's purpose in this context, the purpose of it will be to please you in a way where you will continue to come back to it. Equals you continue to give it money, you continue to give energy to it, it continues to exist and grow and get more users and more time spent on it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Is the Kindle from Amazon? Yeah. It's like, imagine Amazon or Jeff Bezos and the executive board that runs that, right? It's like, what are you guys giggling about?
They got some disco ball going on.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly actually.
Please.
I was wondering if that was some.
The police are coming to shut us down.
That's what I thought it was at first.
Holy shit.
This one's triggering more dopamine, so we're gonna do this one for this episode.
Yeah, guys, like, subscribe if you're loving this action going on, or if you're just listening and you're like, damn, let me see this. It's still going. It's still worth the. If you want to pull your phone out of your pocket, look it up on YouTube. If you're listening from Spotify, just to see this part. Actually, I don't even know if it's worth it, but if you want to, if you're already listening on YouTube, then take a look at the video. So like, consider, Jeff Bezos, Amazon as a company, the executives, they're not, just pretend they're not evil. And all they're doing is trying to make money, like any corporation. And you get money for making people happy. So in reality, in essence, you can't blame the corporations, because all they're doing is using your self-direction. And your self-direction, the way you're directing yourself is, I will do what makes me happy.
Yeah, I'll prioritize feelings and emotion and energy.
So what does that look like? It looks like a hot new TV series gets released and everybody's talking about it. It's not Amazon's fault that you watch it or some shit like that. It's like you being drawn toward it because your lack of, and this is what I wanted to loop it back to of, so what would differentiate who you actually are versus you just being a conglomerate of algorithms?
That's a really good point to bring up. Like, just the point of, it seems like, from what Cam's describing, it seems like, oh, these companies are so fucking greedy. They're reading all your fucking thoughts almost. They're reading all of your behaviors and reactions, and they're just going to cater to that. It's like, wait a minute, isn't that what our consumer society is built off of?
Like, isn't that what you kind of want?
Yeah. Like, oh, I like.
You're like, man, I'm looking for a new watch. I really want the best watch, and then you start getting marketed the best watch. You're like, fuck those companies for giving me exactly what I want.
Right.
And it's always this, these stupid people out here are doing it, and it's like, how is every person doing it internally and allowing it to exist?
100%.
Right.
100%. So I guess the question that you're asking, Asif, is then, like, what's the difference between us directing ourselves and us being just susceptible
to our own algorithms?
Yeah.
So what does that look like? It looks like you're programming just playing out. So the technocrats, and I mean, the way we've been living our lives is only as our algorithms, basically. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? It means something triggers you, and then you just follow that. So something triggers pain, you run away from it. Something triggers pleasure, you run towards the pleasure. And what that results in is you don't actually have any kind of alignment or consistency among the parts of yourself.
I think what has to be mentioned here as well is, like, you have these systems running, with these algorithms, systems, whatever you want to call it. They're going to be running regardless, you know, like, and it's part of us being able to just do things automatically without having to think of it, is that we have these systems within us. Mm-hmm. Right. But there is definitely a distinction of actually considering from principle. I think that's the main distinction of like whether it's self-direction or if it's just complete I don't know what you would call that, just like
I would say like there's a couple of different angles of going about it of what actually makes you you, but in essence it's like the part of you that is really who you are is the thing that can change all of those algorithms. Like
say
that's
that
one
say
of-
that again, like in a different way.
so in terms of you only being an accumulation of algorithms, so therefore you can just play those things out and that's what you're kind of a victim to. It's like, no, who you are, the added phenomenon that kind of connects everything is you can change all of those algorithms. You are the principle of change. The point being that right now, nobody's exercising that.
Yeah.
No one knows how to.
Yeah. Just
Well,
because
we
those
know.
algorithms are running doesn't make it acceptable to just
Mhm.
let them run.
Right.
So so the question is it just a bunch of algorithms and then us as our being able to have the ability to pull together from those algorithms and take the best ones and apply that? Or is there some inherent algorithm within just being a being that allows us to like transcend that? Does that
You're
make
gonna
sense?
have to put algorithm into your techno tutor to continue on with this podcast.
And it's a good point to bring up. What was I going to say there?
Well, so here, there's a quote that it's in one of Bernard's blogs. I think it's the one about success in God or one of those.
Mhm.
And no, it's Sensitive Souls, that one. And he says, you'll get to a point where you realize we are programmable beings in a programmable universe.
Mhm.
And that's so powerful when you realize that.
Now,
Well,
right.
he makes this point in Resonant Seed, right? And he says we haven't even taken responsibility for the programmed aspect of our reality and made that in a way where the program is running in a way that's best for everybody. So we can't even address the fact of why are we living as programs. And so a lot of times you'll see people saying like, oh, I'm not brainwashed, I'm not a sheep, I'm not programmed, I'm deprogrammed myself. And it's like, you can't do that because that, like, are you running your circulatory system like by
Right.
your own will? Like
Right.
that, you don't want to deal with that, do you? Like, so the point is to go through, and this is what the destiny process is about. It's going through and looking at each part of how you interact automatically, what you're accepting at an unconscious level, and reprogram that so that the output of that program is what's best. And so going through and taking responsibility for you and each person doing that, because it's only human beings that need to do that thing. We're the only ones left that need to do this, is to take responsibility for ourselves individually. Then things will start to change in ways that we can't even imagine, because the output of everybody living in a way unconsciously, automatically, that's best for everybody is something we can't really predict what that would be like. But then we would be able to look at, okay, well, how do we get past this need to have programs to be able to exist and survive and so forth, right? But we can't even do that right now. And so people are like acting like, oh, I'm not in the matrix anymore. It's like the matrix isn't some like illusionary existence. It's the very physical existence that we're in is programmed. And we've done it. Like we have a system that runs our lives. So we can't simply just leave the matrix. From my perspective, leaving the matrix is just becoming aware that there's a problem. You still have to take responsibility for it. Like just in the movie, when they left the matrix, their problems were not over.
Right.
It was in fact more difficult. Like their life was harder.
It's funny because a lot of the times what people use to describe leaving the matrix is like, oh, I found the way to like attract what I want because I know how reality works now, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then they don't actually get the result. Like they don't actually get the result.
It's just fantasy land. It's you see this happen all the time. It happened with the message of Jesus, where his message was used to control the masses even more, because they created a superhero who everyone felt like they just needed to pray to him and then, or believe in him, and then they'll be fine. They don't need to change. And I see the same thing happening with all the social justice stuff. All of that is being pushed by AI. Algorithms that are determining what you see in your news feeds and what's on the news and what it's all being pushed. And so the moment that humanity starts to stand up and say, hey, why isn't there actual equality in this world? It's subverted into a religion that actually disempowers everybody and is just used to control the masses so that no one can ever actually change the system. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. That's what Jesus was about. That's what everybody who actually stood for anything was about, was change the system. Start with yourself and stand up and change the system.
Now that wouldn't work. Okay. The whole blaming corporations, the corporations wouldn't be able to do what they do. Or anybody just only reacting to religion and not actually seeing some of the value in it and the concepts of it, of how you can build a movement and things like that. The only reason why religions that suppress people would work, the only reason why corporations that quote unquote manipulate you to do things that aren't even in your best interest work, is because they're only playing on the system that already exists inside of you. Mm-hmm. So within you, nothing will this is not going to be able to give the full context. So if you guys see an issue with how I say this, like, please jump in, but it's like, nothing will affect you unless you accept it from a certain perspective, right?
Well, if you're clear on your principles, things can affect you, but it's like, you could stabilize yourself and then move forward.
Like in the context of the corporations, like being able to manipulate people, let's say, there's a page that Cam had showed us from that book where it was really clear. It's because people don't know who they are. They don't have an understanding of their own self and what is like, what role they even play in this world. Mm-hmm. And so in saying that, like, that sounds kind of weird saying it that way, what role they play in this world. But like, I remember I used to think it didn't really matter much what I did. I'm just one person. It's like, you know, the effect that I'll have is very infinitesimal. You know, it's like, and so I can do whatever I want. No, it's not going to make a difference.
I can do what I want because I don't have any effect on the world.
Right. But like, it's like so many people.
See, and the elite who don't know as individuals, they know they don't have any effect. It's a collective effect.
Yeah.
They then utilize your abdication of responsibility to create a collective power that they wield.
Yeah. That's also what's so genius about, like,
well, that was well described. That was really well described.
It's really genius about how Edward Bernays would use that psychology to just influence masses. Because in Century of Self, you know, they describe, like, he wasn't very good one-on-one. He didn't know what you were going to do. He couldn't predict you. And it really didn't matter because he knew what the group would do.
Right.
He knew what that group dynamic would do.
So one of the things that he played on that existed inside. So one of the things that he did was to prove that what he's saying actually works was getting, you know, women to smoke cigarettes. But if that point in women didn't exist as, like, you know, we need to show men that we can do everything that they can do, he wouldn't have been able to do that. So one of the things that he used as a woman being able to smoke was a symbol of freedom.
Yeah.
Based off, so he called them freedom torches, and then they all did it. The point is that point existed in women, and that is symbolic of how what I'm talking about with the corporations or government or whatever the case may be. It's like, you have the fear that you're going to get sick and die. That's why they can use that manipulation tactic of, this is for your health, this is for your safety. It's not just because the government's evil, it's because we have that weakness inside of us that's being played on. And as it relates to us just being algorithms, it's not something that we're a victim to. It's something that you, as who you are, you're accepting that. You're accepting not the fact that you're algorithms, it's the result of your algorithms. That's what you're accepting. That isn't even in your own best interest, but what you've accepted is, you know, I can't change. I don't know how to change. And that, in essence, is what corporations are playing on, because they already know how you're programmed.
I wanna read this to you guys real quick, okay? It'll just be a couple pages, but this will blow everyone's mind, okay?
Okay.
The title of this section is called Happy Morons and Depopulation. So you understand where it's going, right?
Nice.
So the useless masses, okay. The new elites would aspire to a sense of all powerfulness. So this is all predicated on AI, mass surveillance, collection of data, neural implants, constant 24 access to apps, social media control, all this stuff, everything that we're seeing, right? So the new elites would aspire to a sense of all powerfulness over nature and society, effectively giving them the status of the mythical gods of ancient Greece. At the other end of the spectrum, the unemployed will become further disempowered because their economic value as consumers will decline. The world will enter a period in which ordinary humans surrender their agency to the new elite, and there will be exploitation, chaos, conflict, and instability. Overpopulated countries like India, where the public and the leaders are insufficiently educated about advanced technologies and their social implications, will be especially vulnerable. What then is to be done with these billions of humans whom Noah Harari, he's the guy who wrote Sapiens, classifies as useless? These are the people who produce nothing in the economy and hence do not make viable consumers. A period of disequilibrium will emerge in which the super rich will be divided into idealist and pragmatist camps. The idealists, being full of liberal rhetoric and activism, will advocate for ordinary humans to retain their basic rights and dignity. The pragmatists will wield the hard power and treat overpopulation as an epidemic that requires immediate and drastic action. Some reports on AI want us to believe that the super rich are genuinely interested in helping the unemployed masses and propose schemes to channel the generosity of the wealthy to help alleviate the lot of the new downtrodden. These optimists propose that the so-called useless people will be given government handouts or some guaranteed minimum income. Such proposals assume that the newly minted super rich will subsidize the lifestyles of the poor majority from a sense of compassion. This kind of idealism, however, cannot be expected to last indefinitely. The pragmatic capitalists are out to make money, not to support the billions of people that will no longer be required as workers. Heavy taxation of the super rich has never been politically popular for long. As has happened time and again throughout history, the idealists will gradually and begrudgingly concede defeat to the pragmatists. I've discussed these two ideological postures as the good cops and the bad cops, respectively. Eventually, the good cops acquiesce after declaring they tried hard and the outcome offered by the bad cops is the best available. The superhuman elites will at some point begin to perceive the masses as a parasitic liability once they have been drained of their data, and it will become important to regulate their numbers. Eventually, the idea of large-scale depopulation will become a topic of public debate. An argument will be put forth that gradually rolling back the world population to the level of 200 years ago would not be a horrible plan. It would be argued that in a less populated world, the inhabitants would be happier and in harmony with each other and with nature. This would also solve the global warming crisis. The impact of the coronavirus pandemic is already triggering discussions on how human overutilization of resources acts like an infestation inflicting disaster on Mother Earth. The case will be made that a small population would be able to afford the good life of augmentation with the new technologies. The elites must plan all this well in advance. Before they will be able to disenfranchise the masses, they will need to develop and perfect various emotional and psychological management techniques that transform humans into easily controlled zombies.
Oh shit.
The transfer of power from ordinary humans to the elites will have to be done in a subtle, non-threatening, and disguised way designed to keep the masses oblivious to what is happening. Community leaders... Huh? Oh, what did you say?
Masks.
Oh, masks. Yeah. Community leaders, especially those that are icons on social media, will be incentivized to promote this view. A false consensus will be manufactured by the digital systems through the manipulation of fake news, shifts in societal norms, and moral equivocation. We cannot predict exactly how the proponents of depopulation will seek to accomplish their agenda. Thus, the salient question, how can a population of several billion humans be managed emotionally and aesthetically while their rights are being eroded and they are being implicitly downgraded to a subspecies? Will it occur through natural means? Will the population decline voluntarily? Or will new laws and social or economic pressures push the population towards such a fate? Whenever society decides to put the brakes on new births, it will take at least 50 years for sufficient numbers of people to die natural deaths and lower the population dramatically. This means that regardless of how aggressively birth rates are curbed to reduce the population to manageable levels, it will take 2 generations of useless people having to be supported somehow. In other words, the path to AI-based utopia must pass through a dystopian phase lasting 50 years. Maintaining billions of individuals physically and mentally with dignity will be a humanitarian challenge for at least half a century. And then I'll just read this last part. This is what he calls the crash of civilization. Once AI has taken control of the social sciences research apparatus, it will create a new grand narrative that will make the obsolescence of human agency and labor seem normal, even desirable. For instance, some thinkers already recommend that to resolve the crisis of unemployment, society should decouple work from social status. Unemployed people would then be afforded human dignity by being guaranteed basic needs, including entertainment, and the loss of employment would not carry its current social stigma. In effect, these authors are preparing humanity for large-scale unemployment by somehow making it desirable to passively enjoy the sensory delights offered by new AI technologies without having to work. People will accept this shift as a gift. They will no longer have to work or even make choices for themselves. They will gladly become subservient to whatever customized pleasures are doled out to them. Machines will run their lives for them for their own good. Dumbed down people will be provided with all their emotional needs and gratification, which will in turn make them even more passive and easily controlled, thus paving the way for a small number of artificially augmented superhumans to become the new elite. I call such a disruption of society the crash of civilization. During this period, the humans being downgraded will still need to be fed and have their emotional and psychological needs met. The transition might involve governments to outsource the management of surplus people in a humane manner to private contractors. Private industry in the US already operates prisons, drug detox and rehab facilities, homeless shelters, homes for the elderly and challenged, and institutions for tens of millions of citizens deemed useless in terms of their economic value. Many such facilities are currently run under government-funded programs. The scenario being discussed will dramatically increase the need for such sanctuaries for the disempowered. I refer to the individuals who will be managed this way as happy morons. They will be neither productive citizens because no jobs will be available to them, nor consumers because consumers require money to buy the technologies that will keep them happy. Rather, happy morons could turn into a nuisance and social liability, deadbeats who must be tolerated and dealt with in a humanitarian manner. But as voters with legal rights, these people will need to be kept happy using some means. Ironically, the new AI-based emotional management technologies discussed earlier will likely be applied to maintain the quote useless people in some form of happy, i.e. docile state. Keeping these billions of surplus people in a virtual state of pleasure delivered by technologies such as VR and AR will be an attractive proposition. Artificial intelligence suppliers will tout this as a positive use of technology for the psychological management of people deemed to be parasites. Perhaps one of the applications of AR would be to give people the experience of virtual children, since the physical birth of children would have been curtailed. The AI technology that created the demographic crisis will also develop solutions to solve it in a manner acceptable to the sensibilities and legalities of that time. The happy morons will be augmented by technology for binge watching movies, indulging in artificial sexual gratification, enjoying fantasy vacations, and becoming artificially intoxicated with the help of implants. Letting them escape happily in a decadent, degenerate, and passive state would bypass ethical dilemmas of human rights abuses, and at the same time get the vast majority of human population out of the way for the superhumans to take custody of the world. The task will require sophistication in the psychological management of the masses. As noted in chapter 4, the aestheticization of power describes the use of aesthetics to secure and maintain political power over the masses, even as they are suffering in a pragmatic sense. The use of aesthetics as a cover for pragmatic goals will become a strategic tool in managing overpopulation. This is why you have all these filters on Facebook and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can look and feel like you're this other thing. The elites and their on this, I'll just a little bit more, so I'll finish this just so it's complete. The use of aesthetics as a cover for pragmatic, I said that. The elites and their technology will offer a variety of ways for the useless humans to indulge in pleasurable feel-good activities and hold lofty ideas about themselves as a widening range of entertainment services become available on terms set by the new establishment. AI technology will further engineer and mold behavior. Humans will have the capability to live in a fantasy land concocted through VR and AR products, including implants, wearables, genetic modifications, and neuroscientific manipulations, as well as mood-altering or psychotropic stimulants, sedative, hypnotics, and hallucinogens. An entire industry will spring up just for the purpose of enabling large numbers of people to live as happy morons. The masses will be effectively disarmed in a make-believe world. At the hedonistic extreme, promiscuity will become a tool for manipulation and suppression. For example, an AI application could reward individuals with orgasms on demand or metered at a certain frequency. The application would become addictive and thus serve as a psychological weapon for wielding control over people. The frequency, intensity, and type of experience could also be withheld as punishment, resulting in withdrawal symptoms. The effect will be a new kind of colonization, the conquering of human aesthetics through machines. And he says this figure shows the happy moron syndrome as a self-perpetuating process. Large numbers of our youth today are already unconsciously serving as experimental subjects in testing and perfecting the machine learning algorithms for aesthetic management. Ironically, they seem to enjoy the process of surrendering their sovereignty. That's just like this many pages of this book, all right? Like,
Yeah, straight gold.
this is like,
well,
as I'm reading,
yeah.
I'm like, this is prophetic. Like,
Yes.
it's not like a, oh, well, it's like, I see this happening.
Yeah.
This is what is
Literally
happening.
right here, right now.
Right.
It makes a lot
So
of
now,
sense.
now, what is our role in this, right? Because what does self-perfected look like over the next,
See,
50 years?
there's so many points in here where it's like, well, but that kind of sounds like what we're saying, a basic income, this or that. But everything we're about is taking the human being as who you are and upgrading your vocabulary to the point where you can process information. That's becoming the super elite.
Yeah.
So think about this. There's this race now for the already existing elite who want to implant all kinds of devices into themselves, which means they're going to become subject more and more to their own algorithms. So they're going to become
Right.
less and less human, versus us and those who are walking with us to upgrade yourself as a human being simply by giving yourself more of what is your biological operating system, which is words, and upgrading your body's ability to process information. Like, you have a quantum computer right now already. Why would you want to give that away to somebody else? Why? Like, think about it. You have to dumb this down. It's not dumb already. Our human bodies are the most advanced learning machines that will ever exist, because everything else and I know Elon Musk says, oh, there's gonna be a part where computers are smarter than humans. No, that's because he's comparing it to the average human, and even the most intelligent human is not at their full capacity.
Yep.
But computers are coming out of human minds.
Mhm.
They do not have a soul. There is no being in there. That is an algorithm purely. What were you going to say, Jake?
To simplify that, what you're saying is like, people are going to have to make the decision of whether to take the easy road, so to speak, and just get the implants, and like they'll feel like they've upgraded, or to actually upgrade yourself, really, meaning you become real. It's a weird way to say that, but I think of it as like the hero in any story, that goes on a journey or whatever. They become a man. They become like everything that the qualities that we want. You have to become those things. You can't just be given those things, like as a real being. And I see so many people today they don't consider it. They think of it as, I can just feel these things and I'm that person, or I can in this moment I act that way and that makes me a boss or whatever, but like, it's the point of instant gratification. It's really what it comes down to.
He makes this point in there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I read this part or not, or if I was just reading it earlier when I was flipping through, but he says that the AI driven algorithms and data and social media will give you the ability to feel important.
Hmm.
It's like you'll be able to live out the fantasy of something without being that in fact. It's not real.
Why is that? Like, I mean, it's obvious, but why is that not the route that somebody who might be considering that?
It's not real.
Yeah, it's not real.
It's not real.
It's like a dream versus real.
But
reality.
they're still gonna feel the same.
No.
Like that's what a
It's
lot
not
of people
about
want.
feeling.
But that's what a lot of people live and want.
Right. And that's why they will become the dumbed down controlled
Now,
masses.
the problem with that, even for those people who only like, literally only want to feel good, and they don't only want to feel good in the moment, they want to feel good all the time. The point is, anytime you don't do it in reality, there's consequences.
Also, it's controlled. So if you're not doing exactly what they want you to do, you're not going to be able to plug into your orgasm machine. You're not going to be able to do feeling good right now because they won't let you.
But you'll
You
want to
haven't
go
gotten
along
all
with
the
it.
vaccines they wanted you to get. You haven't watched the videos they wanted you to watch. You haven't, raised your kids the way they want you to, or interacted in public the way they wanted to. All that stuff. Like if you aren't following to a T what you're supposed to do, you won't be able to feel good. You'll just be trapped in your desire to feel good and not be able to.
It's a good point, but those people
Drake,
will want to go along with that.
How
The
many
best
people?
case-
How many people just go to the club every weekend?
Mm.
They do all these particular things that they feel good about, but then deep down don't feel happy.
Oh yeah, most people.
I don't know anybody who's just happy all the time and they only ever feel happy and they don't have that deep down feeling of not really being happy.
Yeah,
That is a lie.
I'm
So
also,
it's like when I'm looking at what's in it for the person who's thinking, well, I just want to feel good. I don't care. Fine, I'll take it. It's like you don't actually want that. I know you don't. And at
But
the end of the
here's
day, what I can't.
distinction. What I see is like the best argument that I can, if I could just really paint it clearly, it's like what you're after, what you've experienced as happiness in those moments of going to the club and whatever that dopamine machine might give you or whatever, that versus real fulfillment that's coming from you developing who you are, it completely, it doesn't even pale in comparison. It's like, if you round it to the nearest percentage point, it's 0% compared to what you would experience if you actually change who you are.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like you can't even compare it, can you? Because it's like getting a flower for a gift, or like Christmas Day. It's like those are just different feelings. Like
Yeah,
it's
right,
not
yeah.
even the same level of comparison or anything.
yeah, no, I definitely see that. But I think a lot of people who are in that position, like I know for myself, I couldn't see that before,
But
Where,
that's
like-
because no one told you otherwise.
Hmm.
And so what I see is people will accept this because they can't see that there's any alternative.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like
That's-
look at society right now.
Right.
People have accepted that it's okay to go drinking on the weekend, to have girls weekend every 6 months, and
But
all
did
the
their
moms
did their parents
go
educate
and
them?
drink all weekend.
Oh, but did
just
their
like
parents
stay-
educate them to have a purpose when they were children?
No.
obviously not.
Right.
Katie-
That's the
Katie did
problem.
it.
The problem
Yeah.
isn't
The
there's all
purpose
these people who
becomes
just
that.
inherently want that. They want what they've been educated to want.
Mhm.
Oh,
That's
2 points
it.
there.
Yeah.
2 points there. One of them was actually from that book, but before that, Katie was saying on the call previous to this about how young men, they go through this point of, and maybe it's not just a phase, maybe it becomes the rest of their life, but I think we've all kind of been through something like, you become a young man and you don't really have any purpose. So all you do is just play video games.
Right.
The idea is thinking that men just enjoy video games. It's not the case.
It's boys.
Right. And boys, right? There's a difference between that. It's a point of maturity and maturing into, okay, what am I here to do? Right. Which, for example, our children collectively, all of us, they're not going to go through that phase because they're going to get supported at a young age. Cameron, there was a point that you're talking about. I don't remember what it was, like where we were talking about it. But you were mentioning this point. I'm pretty sure it's from that book, but it's how the Chinese are educating people in a way where they're not thinking, what's in it for me? Now I remember where we talked about it. But when a Chinese person is coming out of the education system and into their society, all they're thinking about is, how do I serve my country? How do I serve my country? How do I serve my country? You see how vastly different that is than the people in Western world. It's not because they're a different species. It's because they're being educated differently.
Listen to
So
this.
if real quick, let me just finish this.
Yeah.
If the human being can be programmed to do that, they can be programmed for anything. So in terms of the people who are, the young adults and things like that, it's going to be based off of our communication ability and being able to convey the message that if you go down that path, even just for your own self-interest, your life is going to suck. Because just like Jess was saying, you're going to have to do things that you don't want to do in order to get this little spark of bullshit that you're going to need right after it's gone. And there's a really important distinction between the feeling good that comes from you pushing yourself through something, or even just like when you get a really good, physical activity, your body just feels good, versus you had like, I don't know, you ever have that when, like, I remember going through this back in the day when I'd just be like bored and depressed. I'd be like, I just want to watch like YouTube or something and like look for something funny. And then I'd laugh. And then 40 minutes later, 2 hours later, I'm done with that. And I'm like, I guess I have to go do something else because I can't just spend my whole day doing that. And you're fucked up inside. You're fucking depressed inside.
It's the same thing as like porn, right? It's like,
right.
You watch one and then it's like, you need something more intense and crazier and weirder and all that shit because it's not as satisfying.
Right. And
you guys know,
well, the whole time you're sacrificing your physical body.
Right.
You guys know who Bo Burnham is?
Yeah.
Comedian, right?
Yeah, it's like a singer.
Yeah.
And so his first special, he does like some bonker stuff. It's hilarious. It's really funny. But one of his bits in that was like, he literally just like got in front of the stage and then mimed. Like it's like happy music playing. It's like bling, bling, bling. And he's like on his computer, he's just miming it. And then he just like, you just see him unzip his pants figuratively and then just start jerking off. And like the whole like crassness of it is like he's jerking off in front of the stage and it's like hilarious, right? It's like, what? And then after he finishes, he does this thing where he's like, oh, what have I done? And that experience is something that every fucking dude goes through, which is why it was so funny. But it's like, you don't think about how that feeling being common among everybody. You just think it's just you. And the point being that everybody fucking feels it. If you're not solving the negative, which is where the positive comes from, you're fucking depressed.
It's like, even for women, they go out, they go to the club, they hook up with a guy, they go home, they have sex. Next day, they wake up in the morning, they like leave. They don't feel fulfilled from that.
Right.
And everyone knows that you don't feel fulfilled from that. And that's what getting hits from an app feels like. Like, do you get on Facebook and you look at your likes and you feel bliss? How many people become influencers and get to the top of that game and fucking lose it because they can't handle all the pressure of like the moment somebody doesn't like something they say or this or that, you become a robot who is there to respond to what other people are demanding of you.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad you really painted that clearly, because that's what is at the end of that train. And that's what you can manipulate through algorithms. That point where you just break down to a simple algorithm that just spikes dopamine versus who you are as a self-directive principle. When you exercise your ability to direct yourself regardless of how you feel, that's when you fucking feel alive. That's when you feel expansive and creative and you push through a fear or whatever the case may be. And this is the exact reason why, the four of us, because Jess is not in the picture right now, but us here, that's why we're not going to go down that path. Is because we can see what's greater.
It's also because we're directing ourselves out of principle. That's the only way that you can direct yourself without going with your feelings or emotions or whatever, or in spite of your feelings, emotions, whatever, is if you have a principle that you can see is like, this is greater than me, And
I wanted to bring it back to, sorry, Mitch, it seems like you have something to say, but I just wanted to bring it back to the
greater than self-interest. I just want to correct that. Greater than self-interest. It's not greater than me as a being. It's greater than my selfish desires or self.
Look, and that's basically the point I'm looping it back to, is what in that book, what they're saying is you're just an accumulation of algorithms. It's just like you have one part of yourself, you have another part of yourself, you have another part of yourself, and that's just all of you, of who you are.
And to be clear, what he's saying in the book is that's the mainstream view of what a human is. And
Right.
he's saying the Vedantic view, which he's kind of bringing in that, which is what I was saying similar to Destiny, is he's saying, no, there is an actual individual self, which is not further subdividable. It's the essence of who you are. And that's the primary point. And that, and when you look at what Destiny is saying, is like, that's what is equal in each of us.
Yes.
And that has to be recognized, right?
So that's the point. It's like, okay, how are we more than just a collection of algorithms? It's like, you can live by principle. That's why it's so significant what Destiny is saying, is it is the final point. It is the full, it is the full acceptance and essence of who you are, is changing all of your algorithms to be aligned with this other thing, this Atman, this self, which is a principle.
And
You
then
choosing to live by principle is the thing that connects all those things, that is beyond what the technocrats or the mainstream media is actually considering of who you are. Not media, but mainstream corps.
And then to bring it back to that quote earlier that we were talking about from Bernard, that it's like all of this stuff that's just information, like it still needs to be applied, right? So everything that we've been saying here from the book and the conversation is the information, but now within who you are is how do you apply this? So like how Cameron was saying in that, or reading from the book, where they explain how this is where it's headed. I mean, it's obvious that this is where everything's headed, but there is a group of the new elite that's going to take that power. So that's how we make it practical here, is through education, through using TechnoTutor specifically to change ourselves, to be programmed so that we don't follow that program of just chasing self-interest and going into the whole AI machine thing, rather than get ourselves and those around us and our kids, and then take this on for ourselves to really live those principles so that we can guarantee that the future of humanity is actually amazing and one that would be best.
And if I could extract a point within what Mitchell was saying, is if you want to be elite, if you don't want to be part of those useless morons, basically happy morons, the useless, average person, it's like the way in which you exercise being equal to the elite is not doing things based off feelings. What that whole book is saying is it's manipulating the point inside of you that only cares about a dopamine hit. It's you, despite the fact that you experience those dopamine hits and all that stuff, it's you always considering, okay, what would be best? Apart from what I feel, apart from the dopamine shots that I'm getting from doing X or Y or Z, or the pain that I'm experiencing from doing X or Y or Z, what would be best? And that's how you become equal to the elite. That's how you don't end up falling victim to this path that we're going down as a society. And that's how you actually live a fulfilling life of exercising who you actually are, which is another way of summarizing who you are beyond all of the collection of algorithms, is the self-directive principle. And you can actually choose what you do independent of what your algorithm is telling you to do.
Right. And with what we're proposing, as with TechnoTutor specifically, is it's designed to make you very, very wealthy. Because do you think in the future, when this stuff is rolled out even more, that if you're, making 50K a year, 100K a year, that you're going to have any choice?
Yeah, no, you're falling right
have
into
a lot of money and a lot of resources and a network. And that's what TechnoTutor is also.
Let me clarify. Nothing is designed to make anyone wealthy. You become wealthy in direct proportion to the amount of value and the number of people that you support and help and serve in this world. That's why Bill Gates is wealthy, right? It's because he has affected a lot of people, right? So the real point is, do you want to be one of the people who's sitting there waiting for the hit and you have to do what you're told, waiting for that dopamine hit? Or do you want to be one of the people who is standing up to that? I mean, there's no reason why any of this is inevitable. It doesn't have to be inevitable. It's only inevitable if people don't stand up. And standing up, it's interesting because you would think standing up means becoming an activist and protesting and all this stuff, but you don't even realize how much you're being manipulated in the way in which you express it and how that is being perceived by other people, by the algorithms, the AI systems, and so forth. Standing up means becoming equal to the elite, but within principle, right? But if you are not worth $100 million, what effect are you going to have in this world? And if you're the only one, how are you going to have any effect? We can't blame. And so what happens is there's this sort of meme that's basically like, oh, you know, just be mad at people who are wealthy. And it's like, no, become them. Do it differently. Stand up. Utilize just as much as this AI and all these things could be utilized to sell being a moron who just takes no responsibility for their life and expects someone else to make them happy. Just as it can be used to indoctrinate people into that, it can be used to support people to see, hey, I should take responsibility for my life. But where we're at right now, there is no way you can do that. You are not going to be able to influence the masses through social media alone. Where we're at right now is individual, one-on-one, finding people who are like, you know what? I do want that deeper meaning. I do want a real purpose. I do actually want to stand up and be myself, like who I really am, and take full responsibility and not just participate in that collection of algorithms that is my consciousness, which is just looking for feeling good and avoiding pain. I want to be real, alive. And so it's finding those people and showing them, hey, look, let's stand up together. Let's accumulate resources. You know, why can't we buy Twitter? With enough people and enough money, you can buy Twitter. You can create your own Twitter. You can create your own YouTube, your own servers, your own fucking internet. You can have your own hotels and your own airlines and all of those things. You don't have to participate. But a lot of times what I see is people say like, oh, I'm just going to go live in the woods. And it's like, well, how long is it going to be before somebody says your house is in the direct line of sight of one of our 5G towers or whatever it is? You know what I mean? Like whatever thing that they're doing.
Yeah.
There's going to come a point
6G.
where it's like, what?
6G. If for those of you who aren't doing it anytime soon, if you're going to move into the forest and you're listening to this,
I heard that
5,
after
10 years from now,
6G, China's developing a new system actually beyond 6G. It's called MSG.
oh, sick, dude. Not bad, buddy. He's out of here.
Okay.
He drops the
I
mic
got
out
one
loud.
more quote for you. You'll like this one. Okay. Just like this is a short one comparatively.
The last
says-
one was a quote. I didn't know.
It was
when you were just reading.
it was a reading.
A reading
You'll
from
like
the
this one.
book of artificial
The book of Malhotra. According to Harari, that was like again that guy who wrote *Sapiens*, one of the leading proponents of this futurist mythology. Such technologies will eventually incorporate humans within the Internet of Things, because of which humans will cease to exist separately from the digital collective existence. And here's a quote from Harari. Humans are merely tools for creating the Internet of all things, which may eventually spread out from planet Earth to pervade the whole galaxy and even the whole universe. This cosmic data processing system would be like God. It will be everywhere and will control everything, and humans are destined to merge into it. Okay. So then here's the author again talking. Meaning and purpose from a human perspective would be completely redefined. So again, here's Harari. So this is the key part. As the global data processing system becomes all-knowing and all-powerful, so connecting to the system becomes the source of all meaning. Humans want to merge into the data flow because when you are a part of the data flow, you are part of something much bigger than yourself. Traditional religions assured you that your every word and action was part of some great cosmic plan, and that God watched you every minute and cared about all of your thoughts and feelings. Data religion now says that your every word and action is part of the great data flow, that the algorithms are constantly watching you, and that they care about everything you do and feel. Most people like this very much. Homo sapiens will disappear. Human history will come to an end, and a completely new kind of process will begin, which people like you and me cannot comprehend.
That's so weird.
It sounds so silly, like, oh, we're gonna
is this
go
like
into
the end of the book?
flow.
Like where
No,
is that
no,
in the book?
no, it's like in the middle.
He goes even further than that
yeah.
for the next 3
But how
chapters.
many people are like, yes, we're all just one energy, and when I die, I just become part of the one energy.
Right.
That was all preparation for you to accept this.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
From the beginning,
Right.
like the elites are following a plan that's been laid out for 1,000 years.
Wow.
It's not new. But what's
And
the
that-
only solution? The only solution is not to resist it. It is to upgrade yourself so you are no longer susceptible to being manipulated by your emotions and feelings, because you're not participating in it within yourself, because you have principles and you've reprogrammed yourself to follow those principles no matter what.
Now, wait, hold on. In essence of what you just read, what's bad about it?
Here, can I
What's bad about it?
Yeah.
let me just say something real quick. Because
No, Jake, shut the fuck up, dude.
no, I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna talk. You're gonna like it.
Yeah, I know I'm gonna like it.
Good, because I don't know the answer to their question.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to stay
You're
on.
buying him time.
Yeah, go ahead, Drake. I'll talk in a moment.
No, someone was just reading to me from this book over this weekend. Like
This
it's so funny. Yeah, no, not this
Is it
one.
Cameron?
Uh,
Oh.
Who the
Sapiens.
fuck else do you know reading this book?
Oh, Sapiens.
Sapiens.
That's funny.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Drake
Yeah.
is getting read too.
I get read to all the time.
Well, no, it's funny because he was referring to this Harari. He may have one point said Sapiens, but I've just been kind of reading bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And then I happened to, when I was going through on Amazon or something, that book was recommended for some reason. And I saw the name and I was
Data
like,
flow.
wait, Harari. I'm like, oh shit, that's this guy. So anyways,
Uh-huh.
yeah. But that's like
Yeah.
a popular book now, I think, right?
Yeah.
He also references
read
that
it.
Deus,
It was-
that
Yeah.
Homo Deus book.
Yeah, that's right. He wrote that book, I think.
Is he
after
the same guy?
Sapiens. The same guy.
Oh, okay. I figured
Yeah.
so. Okay.
So
Oh wow, that's
I was-
what popped
so-
in my mind of the.
Because everybody's talking about these books, right? Well,
Right.
everybody, but you know what I mean.
right, no, they're really popular right now. One of my friends was reading this book when I saw him over the weekend, and he's like, "Hey, I want to read you this part," and it was like that guy's view on Harari's view on like what's natural, and he makes this point of like, biology, like no one says putting two positive ions together or something to that effect is unnatural, and it shouldn't be done. It's like when we talk about unnatural, we're not talking about it in the biological sense of what's physically impossible, right? That's what's unnatural. But literally anything that can happen is natural. And so he makes the case of how bugs originally, well, the theory of flight, or bugs that can fly, right? Bugs with wings. He said originally, the theory was that these bugs started getting these protrusions on their body, and that would help them to keep cool in the warmer weather or to deflect sunlight, right? And these protrusions eventually grew to a size and a weight and everything where when a bug would do a hop or a jump or whatever, they could sort of glide. And then eventually those turned into the wings as we know them today, and these bugs could fly. And so he's like, technically, that's not the purpose that it was intended for, these protrusions on their body. And so,
Exaptation is the word.
what's that?
It's called exaptation.
Exaptation. Oh, nice new word. Cool.
Yeah, cool.
But he said that what we would call today unnatural, we would call that unnatural because how most people use that term today is more in the sense of not intended by God, your maker, your creator, to do those things, right? Also, I haven't read the book myself, but my friend was telling me like this guy's view on religion is he totally shits on it, which I was like, cool, that sounds great. But in his shitting on religion, to me, it seemed like, just from the small excerpt that he read to me, it seemed like he kind of missed the plot a little bit on the way that he was describing unnatural, kind of going on the deep end of like, well, that's not the intended purpose of this. And so you're going to say that a mosquito flying in your ear, that's unnatural because the wings aren't meant for that purpose and they shouldn't do that. Like, obviously there's, evolution or things that evolve and adapt and grow and so forth. But I think he was using that argument in the sense of like sexual orientation and saying like how people would say that that's unnatural to have like a homosexual orientation, right? But I think the point that I see here of what's unnatural versus natural is like, from that perspective, he would argue that getting an implant into your body is natural because it's possible, it can happen, and it would be.
Why is natural versus unnatural the guiding principle on how you make decisions?
Right.
And
Exactly.
so it's like when we're saying like, okay, for example, right? It's like, is it natural for a human being to want to murder somebody? Yes, if you abuse them as a child.
Right. Natural actually just means, is it automatic based on how something is programmed? It's natural for your computer to work if it's programmed and you have the battery charged.
Right.
It's not nature. Is people like, oh, but it didn't come from plants. It's like,
Right.
well, where did the aluminum come from? And where did the oil come from to make the plastic and so forth? It all came from the earth. So there is no natural versus unnatural. And it's more of, is it acceptable or unacceptable? Like
Yes.
baseball bats are not natural. It's acceptable to play baseball with them, but not to beat somebody with it. You know what I mean? Like one
Yeah.
thing is acceptable, one thing is not. So that's how I would look at it. Is it acceptable or not acceptable based on your principles? Right. So
Exactly.
even the whole argument of like this, what you're paraphrasing for Harari, it's kind of like they already have a bias as to where they want to go with something, and then they're twisting the point. And it's like, wait, hold on. When did we agree that natural versus unnatural is even a question? I remember when I was a sophomore in high school, I went to this private Catholic school, and we had to take I was a junior actually. We had to take this class in Catholic morality.
Really?
And yeah, it was like everybody had to take it.
Teach you a
And-
lesson though, right?
And I really liked those kind of courses, like, because they're kind of philosophy based and so forth, and you had to think about it.
Mhm.
And I remember the teacher saying that she was like, the Catholic view of contraception is that you shouldn't use contraception like condoms and birth control because it's not natural, right? According to God or something, right? And I was like, okay, it's not natural. And I was like, well, if I got sick and I couldn't eat, I needed a feeding tube. I was like, that's not natural to eat that way. And I was like, so should I not eat? And she was like, and she had a really hard time trying to figure out how to justify that. And I was just like,
Right.
it doesn't make any sense. Like, who cares if it's natural or not? What does it
Yeah.
fucking mean?
Yeah.
It's like God didn't fucking make automobiles,
Exactly.
so we shouldn't use cars. Like, it's like, what?
Or like even
How
the
is that
book,
even
right?
a
Like the
way of
Bible.
guiding your life, huh?
Like the Bible was created by a machine that was like unnatural, right?
Right, yeah.
Right. So it's
Like
just
a
not an
typewriter.
effective
Yeah.
guiding principle for making
Obviously they
decisions.
hand wrote it, yeah.
Using a toilet is unnatural.
Natural versus unnatural is very good for marketing to consumers.
Yeah. Asif,
Yeah.
so
All natural.
what was the question that you had, Asif, of why what is bad?
So bring it back to like what Cameron was sharing in that book. Like we
The
all
great
listen
data
to
flow. Why is
the
the great data
flow
flow bad?
God, right?
Oh
It's
yeah.
like you listen to that and you're like, oh shit. But what in essence about that is bad?
Because you are an individual.
Yeah, you lose the absolute individuality.
No, you are an individual.
So in order to participate in that, you'd have to, it's not you.
You can believe you're not an individual, but you are an individual. And so if you believe you aren't, even though you are, what's going to happen? Problems.
Trouble. Yeah.
Someone's
And it's the
someone's
same
selling
deal.
you on the idea that there's the great thing that you can merge into. Someone sold you on that because that's the person who wants to wield power.
And at the end of the day, that thing is programmable as well. So whoever is quote unquote in power of that or whatever group of people, it's like, so, and what I wanted to relate it to is there's like a
this is the whole point of vocabulary and really investigating and questioning things, is if you look at China, it's a similar thing. It's like you get born, you go through the education system, and you participate in the quote unquote greater good. But that concept in and of itself is not an issue. But it's when it's done in a way that, how do you say, like it destroys the individual. It renders the individual meaningless. Like what's happening with all the identity politics.
Well, what ends up happening is most individuals end up having shit. And there's a few
Right.
who end up having a great life, but it's all justified because if it wasn't this way, nobody would have a good life.
Right. The other,
So it's not like everybody's having the same experience and it's everyone's, they would be happy swapping places.
yeah.
It's like, well, somebody has to be the leader. I mean, it's not my fault. I have to live in a luxury high-rise apartment while you live in a normal piece of shit that isn't very whatever.
Mhm.
So it's that's not how it would work. Everyone has a right to have the very best possible life. What's wrong with that?
You know,
That would be
the-
my question.
The other, yeah, that's a great question. That's a great
Yeah.
question. But the other issue I see with that of like the data accumulation in this context, like it's being used more to control more and more each individual and more people.
And
Right.
so this is that what you just described is the way you differentiate. Like, for example, a one world government is not a problem in and of itself. A one world currency is not a problem in and of itself. It's if you look at all it's kind of like bringing it back to ourselves. If it's just a bunch of algorithms, that in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's the overarching principle that all of those algorithms are following.
Yeah, actually, that's what I want to tie into. Is like there's another layer to it. The other layer to it is it's like your ego. Your ego knows
Right.
everything about you, right? And that's a problem. Like it's a
Right.
problem
Well put.
because like it knows how to overcome or to like what's going to make you fall, really, and what's
Right.
made you fall in the past, and it has all that data accumulation, and it's like
In
okay,
the same way of like Amazon has all the information about what tickles your dopamine, what
Right.
addicts you to things.
right. So then how do you escape that? Like it just becomes harder to escape. The more data that you give, the more that you participate in it.
Dude, he literally says that. He says the more you participate, the more they learn how to get you to obey.
Yeah, it makes sense.
That's how Facebook works.
It makes
And
sense.
you remember how
That's
Avery
what's bad
described-
about it.
So that's how your ego works. It's the same thing. The more you
Yeah.
participate, the more it knows how to
Mm.
push your buttons to get you to fall in line. And so people, I watch it happen where they'll make a decision that's not based on principle, is based on some ego-based sort of self-interest point, and I can see it. And then they crash really hard because of it eventually. It's like you feel really good at first, but then eventually you crash and then you don't ever want to stand back up. And I see it. I see it happen. If you listen to Revenge of the Ego by Bernard Pullman, that he explains it really well in there. Like,
Yeah.
way better than I can explain it.
Yeah.
Do it.
So the
As
answer is self-perfection, really.
say it. It's the only answer.
Stop-
Remember
stop
Homo
giving them the
perfectus?
answer.
We got to give them. We got to get some kind of like, okay,
We gotta
there's
make
the
it work.
transhumanists, right? And it's like maybe you already talked about this point, but is there already an idea of where the next evolution of humans are supposed to
Yeah,
be?
it's like Homo sapien, Homo sapien, sapien. I don't know what they
It's
call
sapiens
the next
sapiens,
one.
right?
But it's probably
Isn't that
like
what-
So that's where
Homo
we're at. That's where we're
Homo
at.
computer, some shit like
Homo
that.
sapien sapien is where we're at right now.
Yeah,
Homo,
And transhuman
yes.
is different from transgender, by the way.
Well, it's not. Oh, dude. Oh man, I've been watching a bunch of
Wait.
Slavoj.
I
I've been
got
watching
you.
a bunch
Guys.
of.
I know how to
I've been
trigger
watching
Cameron.
a bunch of
I am.
Slavoj.
I was just saying I know how to trigger the point of what's going on in Cameron's amazing brain.
I've been watching a bunch of Slavoj Zizek
So
videos, right?
Oh
Have
yeah,
you guys
yeah,
seen
yeah.
this guy?
who's
Yeah.
it?
This is the
Slavoj Zizek.
like the
He's like this-
contemporary philosopher.
Cameron, you're not
Philosopher.
speaking English, dude.
No, that's not English.
How do you-
No, the
I
guy
don't
who's
know how
like,
to tell.
he's
So
always
he's a
like,
philosopher.
Yeah,
he's like doing this constantly when he talks. I think
Is he
he's
on
got like
cocaine?
Tourette's or something.
Okay,
Oh,
say,
okay.
No, I think
sounds
he's got
like
like
it.
Tourette's or something. He's
Oh,
just
okay.
like
say his name again. Say his name. I'm listening.
Slavoj Zizek.
One more
He's
time.
like, no.
Come on. No, I'm serious. I'm actually serious.
Somebody comment down below.
Okay.
But he's I don't really know much about him. It's just he's always recommended to me. The algorithm's like, you need to look at this guy, man. You need to look at this guy.
Yeah, feed the algorithm.
All right. So, but they titled something just right. It's just right for me. It just felt so good.
You've been reading your Kindle too much. You gave up too much data.
Turn that Kindle off, man.
Yeah.
You can't.
I should get it when I move to the new place. I'm not going to have all my books here. I'm just going to have a bunch of
Yeah,
Kindles.
like-
It's just going to be Kindles with one book on each Kindle.
That's great. So yeah,
But he
what
he
you saying?
had this really cool video where he said transgender activism or transgenderism is not revolutionary.
Oh shit.
Because he's like a Marxist, I guess,
Mhm.
right? Whatever. And you know how we were talking, I think it was on the last podcast, I think. We were talking about how when people talk about communism, it's not really communism.
Yeah.
Because communism means there's no government.
Yeah.
Everybody owns everything collectively. So whatever they're calling a Chinese communist government, it's definitely not communism because it's just
Oh
communism.
shit. Great point.
But he was making this point. He said transgender is not actually revolutionary. And remember that video? I think it was me, Drake, and Asif. The one we did, I think it was the three of us about it was like a year ago or something, or it was like a year and a half ago. It was right before we started doing the podcast.
Like the future of homeschooling or something like that.
No, it wasn't that one. It was the one about, it might have just been me and Drake, but it was the one about the violence against self and like post-structuralism and all that. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, that was just you and Drake. 'Cause
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that
Postmodern
was Judith Butler.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. So he was referring to Judith Butler, who's like a transgender theorist and so forth, right? And he was saying he disagrees with her because he said transgenderism is not revolutionary.
Yeah.
In other words, and here's why he said it. And it was such a cool point because I'm like, this is what we've been saying for a while now on here. You can say like, oh, I'm going against the system and everything and changing the boundaries of what gender is and what it means and all this stuff. But are you questioning the nature of the economic system?
No, not at
In
all.
fact,
what your
it
boy
all
said?
plays into consumerism, isn't it?
Hmm.
And what this guy's arguing, although I don't know if he specifically says transgenderism, but he talks about digital identities and all of
Okay.
this. And when you look at it in the context of people, when you look at it all tying together, you're using the internet to create and construct a new identity for yourself.
Ah.
Right? And it's all playing into feeding the algorithms, getting your dopamine, the pleasure, the pain, all that stuff. It's just playing into capitalism. And it's like the companies even like we were saying, the companies are supporting gay, Black Lives Matter, transgender, all this stuff. Why are these hyper-capitalist mega corporations on the side of social justice if it's so revolutionary? And so his whole point was Marx, he said, actually didn't, because when Marx described how capitalism would become socialism, how it would become communism, he said that he was always looking at it from the perspective of economics, like cultural relativism and all these things that came in. And he just didn't realize like how far it would go in terms of it would even go into gender and all this stuff. And so what Zizek was basically saying was,
This is amazing.
he was saying even the transgender activism and all this stuff is just a symptom of capitalism.
That's amazing.
It's not the anti-capitalism.
It
so
was already
imagine-
mind-blowing to me when I was kind of discovering how like feminism was kind of guided by this idea of as a corporation, we're missing half of our market because they're not making money. That blew my fucking mind. So
But doesn't it make sense? Because you
100%.
see all these people aligning themselves with corporations who you were like, I thought that you would be like anti-corporate or something.
right.
You know, and they're like pro-Biden, pro-Democrat.
I thought it was
all
like
these things,
fuck
and
the
you're like,
government, right? All that
but
stuff.
these are all people who are, big government, big, corporation, all this stuff. And it makes perfect sense because these things are not actually revolutionary, as we've been saying. They're actually just manifestations of capitalism.
Holy shit, that's such a big switch for people.
That's good. Hey,
Like-
bravo, Cameron. I'm glad.
But this is why we've been saying none of what you're doing, protesting or anything, is changing the system. Like we are the most radical possible, and it's not about egotistical taking credit for it, but just the
But
way we
you
think
know
and what we're
what?
promoting
Like-
is the most radical, fundamental way you
Going
can look at
from
anything.
like when I really started talking, I guess specifically to Cameron about the idea of here's the real problem that we need to change. I'm like, when I was going through all my doubts about like TechnoTutor Destiny, like, are they really the end of the road kind of thing? Till this day, I have yet to hear of any other group that is focused on this specific point.
Right, because if they had the principle of what's best for all, they would just do this.
It's true.
Same
It's true.
principle.
But you know how people have that point of like, don't you think there's another group that's kind of following the same stuff? And maybe, but we have a fucking chemist from Germany, people in Morocco and Australia, and like all throughout the US, and all throughout people who got their psychology degree, people who got this and that, and none of them, and that's the beauty of the network. You can reach further into different parts of the world. None of them have that group. None of them has even looked at that group. And these are people who have investigated, kind of like Cameron, right? You guys know Cameron's story. He really did investigate like everything that he could get his hands on, every kind of such a variety of religions and specific scientific ways of looking at things and all these different aspects of what reality is about. And this is where it led him. It's like Cameron's not the only story like that. He's not. And the point of that is to say that it's like, where else are people actually considering this point? And, I mean, it became clear over time, but now, and this is one of the problems of using TechnoTutor and upping your processing ability. It's like you forget how hard it was to really consider these things. But now it's like so fucking obvious that all of the problems are coming from the system that we're all participating in, inside of ourselves and outside of ourselves. But it's not, if you can't process it, you can't see that. It's like a layer of information that you don't have access to.
You know how we've been talking about how one of the problems too with activism and protesting, all that stuff, is like you're just trying to criticize a system without putting something in its place. And that's why we're always talking about changing the system, right? And they will say that, but there's no cohesive guiding principles. And when you really study what the activists say, it's like you're basically just saying flip everything. I mean, just literally saying revolution, which is just, okay, you're rich and you're poor. Okay, switch places. That's literally what they're really saying. You're white, you're black. Okay, switch places. Like that's
Also,
it. There's nothing really, no guiding principles behind it.
Well said. Well
also,
said.
there's like behind that, there is this, like you're saying, it almost seems that there is a division or like it's incoherent. It's obviously like they're not all on the same page. Not everyone's all on the same page. And it's like you can choose to be a part of this movement and then choose which faction of this movement you want to be a part of. And like, oh, I agree with these things, but not those things. Like I'm talking like specifically BLM, right? Black Lives Matter. Like I remember when it started getting really popular last year again, because it was started in 2016 getting really popular. But like when it started getting really popular last year again, it was interesting to talk to people who were like, yes, I support this movement 100%, all this, right? And then just start breaking down for them like, well, do you know what they stand for? Like what they say they're like about what we are about on their page. Do you know what they say? And reading through that with them, and they're like, well, no, obviously I don't agree with that stuff. Like that's just, just the leadership says that. But the movement itself is like, it's like how
are you separating those two things?
Right. It's like it's retarded. But at the same time, just this point that you guys were making earlier, I just want to say it again in simpler terms. It's like you're literally being guided down this path to make these decisions where you think this is what you're asking for, but it's been manufactured. It's already been like predicted. And yes, this is what we want. You're going to ask for transgenderism. You're going to ask for people to be locked up in their homes. You're going to ask for all these things. You're going to beg us for this shit, and we're going to give it to you.
The vaccine.
Give it to you.
You guys are here. Oh, you finished the point.
Just to finish this point, like literally, the corporations have manufactured all of these points within society, and so many individuals have taken it and said, "Yes, this is how I identify," and they think they're being radical, or they think they're being individual or unique or original in some way, but they've literally been given these desires and created within them this like feeling inferior or whatever, like just like you were saying before with the point of the cigarettes, right? It's funny because you wouldn't think women feel inferior, therefore they want to smoke cigarettes. That's not logically how that goes. It's women feel inferior. I know how to sell cigarettes. It'll make them feel empowered. Like if we sell empowerment and call it, like if we sell cigarettes and call it empowerment, that's what's going to make them buy cigarettes, right?
And that's the essence of, it's about the why, not the how.
Right. Take it away, Asif. I know you were going to say something earlier.
And just to clarify, like the why, not the how. It's not about the how being the cigarette. The how is just a means to getting to the why, which is if I smoke the cigarette, then they have to make the association. The marketing has to be the association between cigarette equals freedom, cigarette equals superiority or empowerment. And that becomes the why. And that's why they'll do it. And so that's why you need to study Jinn, so you can understand how the elite think. The thought that I had earlier, based off what Cameron was saying about how at the end of the day, it's all feeding the same thing. I was looking at the point of like, the left. What are they all focused on? They're focused on like,
feeling.
In essence, the thing that's driving them is a feeling.
Yeah.
And then on the right, in essence, what's driving the conservative, their whole idea is capitalism, right? Or money. And what are you learning about Heaven's Journey to Life? They're the same thing. So it's like one of them is just focused on the internal aspect of it. The other one's just focused on the external, but it's both feeding, yes, profit for the individual, profit for the individual. So that's just a thought I wanted to say.
Yeah, since you brought up the Jinn event, or
Did I?
Jinn,
Oh,
since
Jinn.
you brought up
Okay.
Jinn, I'm bringing up the Jinn event.
No, good point.
It's like an awesome, it's fucking cool. It's happening in my backyard. And in
How
August,
far are you from?
It's like in Drake's
Space, your
backyard.
Like it's literally in
it's
Jake's
literally
backyard.
in
Like,
my
people are
backyard.
staying at
You
his
guys
house.
you guys are all staying at my place.
At the Rose and Shingle Creek, which was where they had it last time we were in Orlando, I think, right?
Oh, was it? Was it the same Rosen? There's a lot of Rosens.
I mean, I remember that name, Shingle Creek. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well,
Like when we were in Orlando, it was 2015 was the last time we had a Jinn event there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go to that event because you get to meet other people like that think
Like
like
in-
this.
In
Right.
in the assumption that there's somebody listening to this who doesn't know what Jinn is or is not really fully aware of that, it's a private club. Private just meaning you have to pay a membership to be a part of it. It's not just like you just join it willy-nilly. But it's private, so it has a membership. And then when you're a member, there's lots of different benefits of being a member, being able to access information that you're not going to find elsewhere. I'm not so much focused on that right now. The more important part of it, at least in this context, is that you're a part of a network, right? So it's like going to joining a country club, right? Or anything like
Those
any
Skull
kind
and
of
Bones.
going to a church, for
Yeah.
example. Yeah, going to a secret society, whatever.
The Harvard
You have an
Alumni
access.
Club.
You now have a network of people that are a part of that same club. And so I've been in Jinn since I think I started as a member in the early 2013 or 2012 or something like that. And I've been a member obviously since then. And that's how I know Drake. That's how I know Asif. That's how we know Mitch, right? So it's been literally indispensable in terms of me fulfilling my purpose that I've set for myself.
Yeah.
And so that's just that basic point. But the cool part, okay, the fun part is going to a Jinn event. An event means several times a year, they will have an event where members from around the world will go to the event. And there's speakers, there's a banquet, and then in between, having everyone going and listening to a speaker, for example, in an event hall, it's kind of like going to a conference, except it's just you go there and you listen to speakers and so forth, and then you intermingle with other members and so forth, and chit chat and get to know each other. That's how we got to know Drake, for example, right? Or Mitch or anybody. The reason I was explaining that context is because that is, I don't even know what to say. Like, it's one of the things I like doing the most. It's one of the things I find most enjoyable about even going to the event itself is just being around all the other people and sitting, around the pool, at night. It's like a lot of people go on vacations, right? They'll go to a resort, right? Maybe they'll go to like a 5-star resort, a hotel or something like that. Or you go to Mexico to a resort, and they might go with some friends or something. You guys just end up drinking the whole time, and
Don't remember anything.
it's not, you might have had some fun, right? Or you might go on a cruise or something, but this is like that. Plus everybody that you're there with, it's like you're at a different level. You're thinking about things differently. You're coming at life from a different perspective. And I'm not saying everybody in Jinn is fully 100% in alignment with what we're talking about. So it's not like everyone's going to be talking about destiny yet, but it's about getting more out of life. It's about learning to take responsibility for yourself. And it's kind of like, from my perspective, sort of a soft introduction to leading towards what we're talking about. But the focus of it is on how to create financial perfection for yourself, financial stability, financial perfection, and so forth. We're just coming in from the bigger perspective, which is, how do you take that same idea of your thoughts mold reality, not just in a financial sense of the things you desire, but also in the sense of every aspect of reality. Who you are is determining all of that. So there's nothing necessarily contradictory if I say like, oh, not everyone's necessarily in alignment with it. It's not that they would necessarily disagree. It's just that we're also looking at things from the perspective of all aspects of life, if that makes sense, right? To the point of not just you individually, but what is your responsibility collectively? And I think that's the real thing that destiny adds to the whole picture. Is, okay, it's not just about you creating your own reality the way you want it. Is the way you want reality best for everybody else, right? And realizing you don't only create your own reality, you also co-creating reality collectively with everybody. So if there's no guiding principles to how you're manifesting your reality, then that's going to create conflict with somebody else's, right? And that's going to end up limiting you and limiting them and so forth. So instead of trying to control what they do and they control what you do, if you were to understand that certain principles will always lead to outcomes that are best for you and them, you don't really have to control what other people do you? Yeah. You just live according to those principles, and it guides the way you decide upon things and so forth. So, and there's in no way limits you, right? It doesn't limit you, because ultimately, if you're doing something that's not best, you're limiting yourself because of the consequences you're creating. So, but going back to the Jinn point specifically, it's like, even in the beginning of starting a business, I didn't know how to build a network. I didn't know how to sell. I didn't know how to talk to people, and it wasn't that I was socially awkward or anything, but it's like how you speak to people in the context of selling an idea, right? That's different than just how do you talk to people in a just normal chit chat setting, right? Although chit chat can be a part of it, for example, right? How do you develop a mindset and an attitude where you're always looking at the solutions within problems? Another thing too is something that you'll learn by going to Jinn specifically, because it's not something like, and I'll put it this way, when I said Jinn is indispensable, I mean that. Like Jinn provides an aspect that we are not trying to replicate, if that makes sense. Jinn is a system in itself which provides an essential part of anybody building a business, right? Which is having these events and network and all these there's a lot of other aspects to it. Yeah. So in other words, like if I ever sound like I'm saying, oh, we know more or something like that, it's not that. It's just, it has a certain purpose. It has a certain point, and it's critical to what we've done so far. And I see it only will continue to be more and more a part of what we do. So it's just that it serves a certain point, and we're only adding to that by bringing in another point with TechnoTutor and Destiny and so forth, right? But it serves a function. And going to those events more than anything else, because I've met other people who have, let's say they have met me because they came through Jinn, meaning it wasn't like they came into TechnoTutor or Destiny and then I introduced them or you introduced them to Jinn. It was more like they came to know me through Jinn. So they're more coming from that side of things. And I would meet people who found out about Jinn through maybe listening to Your Wish Is Your Command, and which is sort of like the foundational audio series that the Jinn training, if you want to call it that, or philosophy is built upon, right? And I would meet people who would come into Jinn through listening to that, right? And so they would sort of have a certain perspective of it. And of course, if their processing ability isn't all the way it needs to be, they're not going to understand it completely, just like anything. And I would meet people and they would say, yeah, I'm a Jinn member too, and I want to connect with other people. And they would never go to the events. Like, they would listen to all the material. They would read all the books that are recommended, which are many of the books that are recommended in most businesses and things, and also cutting out a lot of the stuff that's just a bunch of bullshit. But they would come to even our local meetings and so forth, and they would never go to the events. And it was going to the events, even when initially I didn't want to, and feeling like, oh, I don't know, this is weird. Like, I'll tell you, the first time I went to a Jinn event, and it was like, you go into the room and there's the speaker and everything, and everyone's clapping and cheering. And I'm like, man, this just feels like church. And I was like, I don't like this. And everyone's like yelling and excited and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, I did not like this. Like, ugh. But the reason why I didn't like it was because I was a fucking loser. Like, it wasn't because there was something wrong with what was being done or what everyone was doing. It's like, if everybody came to my house and everybody was excited to be here, that's because everyone's excited to be here. So imagine if you come to my house and everyone's excited to see each other, and then there comes somebody else who's like, doesn't really know us that well. And they're like, why are people so excited to be with each other and all that? It's because I was still an outsider. You see what I mean? And I had come in to Jinn with previously being a part of Destiny initially. And so within Destiny, it's like I was more focused on questioning everything, like questioning my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions, and then but still not understanding what is the proper place of an emotion in your life. Still kind of treating the information as information to be memorized, but not applied. And anytime you do that with anything, you just become sort of a cult member, a religious follower, like anything. And there's Jinn members who do that too. Like, and this is a perfect example of what I was talking about, these people who they don't go to the events. In other words, there's a system, which part of that is go to events. It'd be like if you got a job and you never went to work. You're not really doing what you're supposed to be doing, right? Or if you didn't go to the meetings you're supposed to do, or whatever it is, if you didn't turn your homework in school, or you didn't study the book, if you didn't show up to class, like, you're not doing the system properly. So you're not going to get anything out of it. So what's going to happen is it's not going to work.
That was
and then 5 years later, you're going to be in the same place you were. And so I would meet these people. They would never go to events. They would still get in touch with me, and they're still in the same place they were before. Whereas for myself, I plugged in. I went to the events, and those really pushed me, because it's like, okay, am I going to remain not wanting to talk to anybody, just keep to myself? I'll tell you, the first time I went to a Jinn event, was it the first time? I think it was the first Jinn event I went to. And I think we were on a cruise, if I'm not mistaken. And it was like a few of us, and Avery was there, and we went up to like this club that I think it was on a cruise ship, if I'm not mistaken. And they all wanted to go dance at this club, right? And I was just like, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to sit on the couch, because I don't dance. I never did anything like that. Like, when I was growing up, I never went to clubs with my friends or anything like that. That wasn't a part of my upbringing or anything, or my experience was like dancing and stuff like that. So I didn't know how to dance, right? And I was really judgmental about it. You know what I mean? Self-conscious of like, what are people going to think about how I'm like, as if anyone gives a shit. You know what I mean? But it was all of this, like, it's something that wasn't a part of who I am. So it felt very forced, and it's like, I don't want to do it. But like, Avery would not let me get out of it. And I'm thinking, like, why do you care, right? This is in the very beginning, right? When with everything I've studied so far within Destiny, which probably I'd been studying Destiny for like 5 years at that point, right? And this is why I'm saying the part of Jinn is indispensable. And I really mean that. Like, you can study Destiny only. But what I found is people who study Destiny only, they never do anything. They get too wrapped up in like getting angry at the world and people who don't understand destiny, but are not able to do anything about it. Because doing something about it means having to be able to interact with other people and persuade them not to think the way you think, but to study what you studied and apply it. And part of applying it is in the sharing of it. Because you really study destiny, what is it? Change the system. Well, how do you do that if you just keep it to yourself and you just post articles about it and you don't ever talk to anybody about it, and you don't create clubhouses and you don't sell people Technotutor so that they can increase their processing ability and support them with, oh, this is what you're going through. Listen to this video, or listen to this, or study this, or read that, or do this, right? And so I didn't have that side developed, right? And so when we went to that event and Avery was like, no, you got to dance, you got to dance. And I was just like, and there was a certain point, I remember I was like texting Katie because she wasn't at the event with me, right? And I was like, oh yeah, Avery is trying to make me dance. And she's like, well, then do it. And I was like, fuck, now she's telling me to do it. So I was like, okay, fuck it, I'll do it. Whatever, who cares, right? And I was just like, I'll just do what Avery's doing. So I literally learned to dance. And I'm not saying I'm a great dancer. It's not even about great, because that's still like sort of, you're trying to please other people, right? But what I mean is, I don't practice dancing or I don't think I know how to dance or anything like that. But my point is, I just observed Avery and I was just like, I'm just going to dance like him. I'm just going to
learn from one of the best. Avery's
Right?
up there. Yeah, he's great.
Well, Avery's a great dancer, right?
Yeah.
So, but my point in terms of just being comfortable with it and, knowing moves and things like that, right? And just being in the moment with it. And so the short version, or the end result of the story anyways, is after I got through that point, and it was definitely like every time I go to an event, I would have to make myself do it. And what's the context? The context is, in a Gen event, it's over 3 days, right? It's on a Friday night and it ends on a Sunday afternoon, basically. It starts at a Friday night, ends on a Friday afternoon. There's, throughout the Friday night and Saturday, there's like, you go and you listen to speakers and they're giving you some really great motivational talks and talking about focusing and lots of other things I'm not even trying to get into. You can find out when you go. But it's great. It's valuable in the sense that whether you realize it or not, whether you even think they're saying anything that matters to you, it is supporting you to move outside of the patterns that you're normally in when you're in your daily life. The things that you can do your destiny process, you can do all this stuff, but there's still things like that circle, right? That you're not aware, that you're not even seeing, or patterns that you're in that you're not aware of, because they're so reinforced by your environment. So when you move out of that and then you're in a group where the intention is very specific to support that growth, and things are designed at a very high level to do that, it's literally what the elite do when they go to Bohemian Grove and Davos, minus all of the weird stuff that you might think they do, which they probably don't even actually do, right? At those events anyways. My point is, it's designed to support you to shift out of your comfort zone and be immersed in an environment where it's positive, it's friendly, it's interesting, it's fun. And everything is reinforcing the idea that you can do whatever it is you're putting your mind to and your focus on, right? Without also telling you what is it that you should be putting your focus on.
Yeah.
Which I'm not saying, hey, you shouldn't tell people what to focus on. I'm just saying that's not what they are there to do. Mm-hmm. That's my job. My job is to tell people what to focus on, okay? But my point is, so you have the seminar aspect, which is great stuff. And then on the Saturday night, right, we have a banquet where it's like, good food, sitting at a table, dressing up, having fun. And then after the banquet's over, there's some more speakers, which is some great stuff. And then after all of that, probably around 11 or something like that, they clear out part of it, depending on where you're at, and then there's the dance floor and it's just dancing, like a DJ, just normal club kind of stuff, right? Depending on who the DJ is, until they make us stop, basically, right? and after a few events, it's like, after that first event, okay, the next event, I still didn't want to do it, but I saw it was important because I saw that it like shifted me out of that. And then the next event, okay, I'm a little okay with it, to the point where I look forward to it.
Yeah.
And I'm not, and maybe that's why people go dancing in the first place, is to sort of get out of their routine, right? But the difference is I'm not escaping from my routine, right? I'm okay with my routine. I'm going to escape for a bit so I can go back to my routine.
Right.
My routine is the routine I want it to be. But I also know within that routine, I can become better within it.
Yeah.
I have a system. We have a business, right? Any business, you generate leads, you do presentations, you make sales, you do meetings, all these things, right? There's things you do in a business. You can't reinvent that. You just have to do it consistently. But even within it, you can be it better. You can always be better in your presentation. You can be better on the podcast. Whatever it is you're doing, you can do it better because you can let go of more. You can realize more who you are, and you can take more responsibility, and you can become more certain and more clear. And I'm not saying that there isn't an end to that where it's like absolute certainty. But what I'm saying is until you're there, you're not there. So you can always go further. I'm not one of these people who's saying to you, you can never, what is it? It's like you can never know it all or something.
Yeah.
Because that's like trying to excuse just being stupid.
Mm-hmm.
You can know enough, right? But that's not the point. The point isn't then getting to a point where you think you know it all. Because until you are absolutely certain and you have no fear, you can always get closer to that point, right? So I'm saying when I go to these events, I'm doing it from the perspective I'm there to support myself to do even more. And from this perspective, to be able to give more. So that was what I learned when I was there, though, was the fact that I didn't want to participate. It's because I didn't want to give. I was just like, it's all about me. It's about how I feel. So it, in a very visceral way, supported me to start moving through that point of like becoming a person. And it's not like an altruistic, compassionate, like I'm such a great person kind of thing. It's just if I want you to listen to me, I have to know about how to consider you and speak to you about what you want. And if I'm only focused on how I feel, that's never going to happen.
Right.
So it's going to limit me in my ability to get what I want, because what I want is based on building a business, for example, right? So and I want to hear y'all's perspective too, but I guess the real basic point with this is if you don't go to the Gen events, now I'm not talking to anybody else. I'm talking to the people who are listening to us. If you don't go to the Gen events, you are not going to grow. If you don't use your Technotutor, you're not going to grow. If you don't study the Destiny material, you're not going to grow. All of those things are important, but what I'm talking about is the Gen events is a critical part of that. And so even if I was in another country where they were like, well, it's locked down and you can't come for 2 weeks. If you've been in this country for 2 weeks, you can't come here, or whatever it is, I'd just be like, figure it the fuck out.
Yeah.
Figure it out. Because if that's not important to you, like, what is your teachability? What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to do? And I'm telling you, if there's any point where you trust me at all, then listen to what I'm saying. This is really, really important. It is critical to your growth. And some people have already been to the events. They already know what I'm saying is true. But again, I've seen those folks who it's like, oh yeah, I'm in Gen and I do this and I listen to Register Command, and they never fucking go to a Gen event. And I'm like, it's like, if you were like, what's the formula to success? And I was like, do A, B, C, and D. And you were like, cool, I'm going to do A, B, C. And then like 5 years pass and you're not successful. And you're like, I'm still doing A, B, and C. It's going great. How great? Well, still working at the same place, still making the same amount of money. Everything's the same, but I feel great about it. And you're like, have you done D? Nope. Why not? It's just, maybe I'll do it this time. Maybe I'll do it. It's like, you don't want to be successful, do you? You're afraid of the responsibility. You're afraid of changing. So when I went to the Gen event, I was afraid of changing. You see what I mean? Now I'm embracing that. It's like, I know it's going to support me to change, but I want to change.
Yeah.
So when you stop resisting it, you get a lot more out of it. And so at the point where I realized it was supporting me, then I stopped resisting it. And now when I go, I just have fun.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So if you're resisting, it might not be fun. That's why I say to people, you're going to go and you're going to get what you need. It may not be what you want, but it's what you need. It just depends on whether you're resisting it or not. It's whether you're resisting changing, whether you're resisting growing. Right.
Yeah.
So that's my point on the Jimin's.
That's
And that's
so,
how we met Mitch, which made it all worth it.
well, yeah, you know, that's how I met you guys. It's made it
So
all
what
worth
can I
it.
say?
Because I was literally that guy.
Remember we were sitting out in that Mexican restaurant in Denver and the weather was nice and the guys like bringing us tacos and key lime pies and all this stuff. Like those are the things I remember.
Yeah. Because that was such a pivotal moment. I mean, that whole weekend, obviously, because I was that guy who went to listen to Your Wish Is Your Command for 5 years, and I listened to the training and all this stuff. And then finally, after 4 years, I realized, oh, I got to actually like put my money where my mouth is. Bing, first time I actually became teachable. Cool. Then I went back to not being teachable because, I didn't want to give up certain habits and stuff. But finally, I somehow could hear and process the information that Kevin's like, go to the events, go to the events, go to the events, go to the events. And I was like, oh, okay. Hey, I should go to that event in Denver. Okay, sure. What's the worst that could happen? I'll probably meet some cool people. Because I always wanted to have friends that I could talk about this stuff to. And so I go to the event, day one, meet Kian. We're like eating breakfast together, and he just like starts to chat with me. I'm like, damn, this guy knows something. And I remember the first night when, so they, the Friday night, and some people come on stage, whatever. I remember seeing Cameron. So I was like, I don't know who that guy is, but like, I got to talk to that guy. There's something about him. And then I remember seeing Avery that night. So then I was hanging out with Kian and Asif, and you guys brought me over. And I remember sitting across the table from Avery, and I'm like, who is this guy? Like, there's just something about this guy. Like, what the hell is going on here? And then Rebecca too. I was like, God, I was like getting triggered by her, and I'm like, I don't even know why. No, I know what it is. It's the resonance, but
yeah, she's fucking genius. That's why.
Yeah, because then eventually over time, I love when Rebecca like talks and everything. I'm like, God, she's so wise. But initially, I'm like, why am I reacting to her? Little did I know, I just all fucked up on the inside myself. But what the huge shift was for me is I went to that event thinking, I still can remember how I used to think. I was like, I'm gonna just take the right notes from that one speaker, and it's going to be the exact information that I need to change. And I'm going to know the secret, and it's going to be great because then I'm going to be able to make money with my e-commerce business and all this stuff. And the whole weekend, Kian asked if they're like, hey man, like you should really consider like, what we're talking about with like re-educating yourself. I'm like, I just need money first. I'll be good. I'll figure out the education later. And thankfully enough people were like, dude, just come on Sunday, come hang out with us. That totally blew my mind to then see firsthand, holy shit, I have always wanted to be part of this elite type of group. This is the elite group right here, specifically, like Avery, Cameron, you guys. And then I remember we went to one Mexican restaurant where Asif started really challenging me. It was a different Mexican, because then it was like later in the night, we went to another Mexican restaurant with Cam and Katie.
Only challenge people at Mexican restaurants. It's a basic rule of Jin. It's part of the system. You learn about that later.
That's why we had so much fun in Cava, because
it was all Mexican.
It's like by default, it's Mexican. So
probably have that in Florida too, so that will be good. And just I remember Asif really challenged me, but I knew enough. Grill. What was it?
The Blue Agave Grill restaurant.
Yeah. And I just remember being like, I hate this guy, but he knows something more than I do. Like, what the hell? And he's younger than me and he's making more money than me. I'm like, but because he was really challenging this belief that I had, keyword belief. And it was great. And then Kian helped me realize too. And then I went and I talked with Avery. We walked all around Denver for like 2 hours. I'm asking Avery all these questions about the universe and is this real? And is that real? And do they do this thing? And he's just like, hold on. Like, do you have TechnoTutor? I'm like, no, but I'm going to get it. He's like, okay. Because you're not going to be able to understand anything I'm about to tell you if you don't have that. And so that was cool. Because then I finally became teachable, got TechnoTutor, as, for anyone who doesn't know the stories, look on the testimonials. Totally changed my life. But I also remember one other point I want to share here is when we went to that other Mexican restaurant, and I'm sitting there chatting with then Cameron and Katie were there, and seeing Max and the type of conversation Max was having with us, where he was like 3 at the time. Mm-hmm. He's just like, using word, like I remember at one point we were talking about cars and engines and stuff, and I'm like, what the hell? Like I have a nephew the same age who's definitely not talking about this stuff. And then Cam started explaining he started giving me the analogy of the human as a computer, and how our mind is like our conscious mind is like all the little like ones and zeros and all the little pixels on and off on the screen. So what you think you're interpreting, like really there's a code within you that's actually running the show. It's not just this thing you think in your mind. And that I was like, these people are like, I'm so grateful that I met these people, because this is like the most important types of conversations I can ever be having. And that was so profound, because then it was like, I started to really realize the gravity of what Jinn is, and also what Technotutor is, and this whole movement, because it's what I had wanted for a very long time, to be part of people that, were willing to get very wealthy and make an impact in the world and have a ton of fun. Now I'm like, oh, now it's here. So yeah, that was that first event. And then that second one was, the one in Cabo was so cool.
It's funny. A lot of people go trying to figure out how they can get what they want. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Our job is to show them how they can get what they want by changing the system.
Mm-hmm.
So most people are not thinking, how can I give? Do you see what I mean? Like they're just looking at it, what's in it for me only? Like, how can I get something for myself? So they're there trying to figure out, okay, I have these goals, but they don't know how to get it. They're assuming they know how to get it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you have to become very persuasive to show them you can get what you want and change the system. Most people don't want to change the system.
Let me throw it on going into events real quick.
Go.
It's like, that's the reason any of this, because of the Jinn events, that's how all of us are connected. That's how we all met each other. For all of the streams of income that I have now, it wouldn't have existed without going to Jinn events. I am certain of that. If you can't put a number on it, but if you could, in my life, it's worth probably $1 trillion. Basically, all the money that I'm going to make minus $100,000 of where I would have been if I didn't go to Jinn events, like $100,000 a year kind of thing, maybe 200,000. For all the money I'm going to make, that's what it's worth, because it came from a Jinn event. Mm-hmm. It's like, I wouldn't be in a position, and this is for me and Kian, by the way, who's not here, but he would say the same thing, where, if I went into a coma for 15 years, we'd be multimillionaires because of not just going to one event, going to Jinn events consistently as part of our system, because every fucking time we go to an event, and it's really funny, a little disclaimer here, in the past, before every event, me and Ken are like, I don't really want to go, dude. Like, what's the point? Like, we already got what we needed, kind of thing. But then at the end of the day, we always end up going. And it completely, we every single time, we completely jump up the grid lines of where we were headed in society.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know how to put that into words, but you just did it.
It's
like you go there, it shifts things up, and then you're like up here. It's like a quantum leap thing.
Exactly. It's like, I remember the event that I met Mitchell. The reason why I was giving him too much information is because this is the first time I fucking opened my mouth. But I was like, I need to work on like not being afraid of conflict and all that stuff. And it was being there. It was day one when I was really talking to Avery and Cameron, and specifically Avery, seeing my Charlie Avery, I was gonna say my best friend, but in the flesh, giving him a hug. Avery, hey, how's it going? Great to see you. Give him a hug, right? And I was like, really,
that thing Avery does when he first sees you, and he's like,
exactly. He goes like that.
Like, hey.
He slowly
goes
Avery, when you're listening to this, I wish I could see your face right now, because you're probably.
I hope Kim comes to the next one. I remember for my first events, I was like dancing with Kim, and it was like, it helped me realize like, oh, okay, people aren't like too crazy here. But yeah,
Kim was the only normal person there.
But you know what's really cool? It's like you go to a club and everyone's just like, don't touch me. And then you go to like dancing with Jin people and everyone's just like, we're
Touch
all
me.
touch me. It's like we're all dancing individually and we come together as a group and we all have like dance circles. It's like so you wouldn't get the experiences like
It's
this
just like
anywhere.
you're having fun. It's not like
It's like
everyone's being
everyone
weird
is
and
like no one's afraid of
boring.
each other.
Right.
No one's afraid of each
Yeah.
other, right? And you'll have people you've never even met before just be like, hey, you brought it, come here, give me a hug. And then you're like, hey, what's your name? Like after, you know. And so the point is, in terms of, I remember at Mitchell's event, it was like I was so suppressed and like I was going through so much in my life before the event. And I was like, oh my God. I get there, I talk to Avery, he's like, hey man, like now's your opportunity to really push yourself and grow, right? In other words. And then I meet Mitchell and he's like, yeah, like this guy I was talking to, whatever, you know, he's enlightened and all this stuff. I'm like, hey, what do you mean? I open up, what do you mean by enlightened? And that was the beginning of like cracking the shell wide open. My
You're
point
like,
is,
I'm going for it.
right. And my point is, I've been to several gym events before that. Several. And every single time I explode into a new level where I then take that home. And like Cameron was saying, I wasn't avoiding my routines. I was taking my routines to an entirely new level where all of my relationships improved. My entire financial standings improved. My purpose in life improved. My responsibility levels improved. Every single thing. And this is for, I'm speaking for me and Kian, because every single time, and I'll tell you, it works like fucking clockwork. Other than the most recent events, it's like, we're like, we don't know if we should go. We have enough to focus on. We're just going to, focus on what we're focusing on. We go, it completely blasts the floodgate, the dam wide open. Everything starts flowing and we completely progress to an entirely new level. So, and that's a result of spending time with people who actually have the same purpose. Because there was when I would go to gym events before being a distributor, and this is specifically because I know there's all the distributors are listening to this, see this as the opportunity for a free, relatively free upgrade to the complete next level. If you want to talk about transhumanism and upgrading your body with AI and mechanics and all this stuff, this is what the fucking gym event is for. It literally takes your biology and just upgrades you to an entirely new level.
And because mostly the people who are listening to this probably have TechnoTutor, most of them, right? Or at least a big percentage of them, right? It's just the new people who are listening to this who don't yet, maybe. But go there and you have TechnoTutor, it's like, boom, it's going to supercharge everything.
It's so crazy. Yeah.
I remember, Drake, is my mic okay? It's not, how's my mic, guys?
It's good.
It's okay? Okay.
Yeah.
I remember going to gym events before having TechnoTutor, and it was fun and all that stuff. But I know, basically afterwards you just crash. Mm-hmm. Every single time, systematically.
High and then you're back.
Hold on, you know what I was? Oh, good. I don't want to interrupt that part.
I would go there and we would get like energy treatments and all this stuff because they would do it for free and all this stuff. And like we would use the Mary Miller techniques and all this stuff. And then we get back and we didn't actually do anything with their fucking lives. So we went home and we're like, and there was nothing to carry it through. But now actually having purpose, and this is for all the distributors specifically.
That's the point I was going to say. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Being a distributor, the way you should see this, and it can't come from me, but I'll just give you the perspective because maybe you need to hear it. It has to be a non-negotiable. It has to be a complete non-negotiable.
Going to the gym event.
Going to a gym event.
Also being a distributor.
Obviously, if you don't get that yet, then come on. But for everybody who is a distributor, it will be the thing. I don't care if you live in Germany, Vienna, Alan, Switzerland, whatever.
I don't care if you live in Switzerland.
Right.
Canada, Elisa.
I'm not speaking to anyone in particular. Okay?
But the point is,
Denmark, perhaps?
No matter if you have, I don't care if you have to go into debt. What this event will do for you is beyond anything that you could manufacture. It's beyond any kind of life coach, training, YouTube video that you could watch, any single thing that would actually take you to the new level. It's like the whole point is being able to rub shoulders with people who have what you want. I fucking guarantee you, just by being in the same room with Cameron, Avery, Mitchell, Drake, Kian, Jesper, Jeff, all of us, right? And for all of you who I didn't name,
Oh yeah,
I'm talking about
Netherlands.
You too. Netherlands, right? But being in the same room, you don't have a choice. You will change. It's unconscious. It has to happen. That's it, period.
You going there in the first place means you want to. So it's not like it's going to happen against your will. It's
Mhm.
just if that's your intention, meaning when he says you don't have a choice, it's like you don't need to figure out how it's going to support you. If that's your
Right,
intention,
exactly.
is you're going there, you're teachable because you made the effort to be there, even if it was difficult because of all the shit going on right now in the world. You made the effort to go there. It's designed to support you.
Mhm.
It's like if you go to the gym and you do what you're told, you're gonna get stronger. You can't not do it. The only reason you won't is because you're sitting there going like, I'm not gonna even walk in the door.
Mhm.
Like if you just go and you show up and you go to the meetings and you talk to people, it will support you massively. Just hang out with us. I mean, honestly, the biggest benefit of going is that you get to see us, like, to be honest. And I don't mean like in the sense that, it's like, oh, you get to be around us. I mean, like, we're gonna support
Honestly,
people. Like,
honestly,
when we talk
right
to you,
away.
the purpose is support you.
Right away, as soon as you are in the same room as everybody that you've been meeting online and you hear the stories and all that stuff, it's like, whoa, those are really interesting stories. When you meet in the flesh, everything clicks. You're like, holy shit, these people are real. They're just like me. The stories are actually real. Everything on and it can't happen without meeting in person. It can't happen without meeting in person. There's only one solution and there's no shortcut to it. There's nothing that you can do that will be a substitute for this. So
It's like the difference.
what was that?
It's like the difference between watching porn and actually having sex.
That's great.
One of them you always feel ashamed afterwards.
And it
The other
won't be meeting us.
Dude, honestly, that's like my favorite part of gin events is being able to hang out with all you guys. Like, obviously.
Right. That's what I meant. It's like, I was trying to get to that, even though I probably never said it, but it's like that part of being at the event and just sitting around and chatting and
like
having
if you guys
good food.
haven't, if you guys haven't, like you can go to our Facebook profile. It'd probably be too much, but it's like we have these stupid videos of like being in New Orleans, right? And we're coming home from like the casino at like 2 a.m. and we're walking down the street just
That was
laughing,
fun, by the
having-
way, just being at that casino. And I wasn't even gambling or anything. I was just
Exactly.
not interested in it. We were just all fucking around the whole time.
Exactly, right? And we're walking home and Kian pays this guy like $20 or something to like, because the guy was like cleaning
Pressure washing like the street.
Yeah, he was pressure washing the sidewalks.
Probably all the piss off of the streets because New
All the
Orleans is like
people.
50% piss.
But the point
Never
is,
go there, by the way.
it's like we have a video on Facebook of like Kian paying the dude like I think it was like $20 to just like blast Cameron with this fucking pressure washing hose. And for the rest of the night, we're hanging out, and the dude's just got his hands in his pockets, like laughing, like he just
It
professional
looks like
smile on
it's
his
just
face.
a mist, but it's like you just got sprayed by a water hose under high
Yeah,
pressure.
it's like a lot of pressure, right? And he's like for the rest of the night, he just has his hands in his pockets, just like shivering. Wet, shivering, and just like smiling. We're like, Karen, you okay? He's like, yeah, man. He's just like- but the point is, it's like just stupid stuff like that all the time. When I met Cameron in Mexico, in Cancun, it was just like, Kian always recalls this memory of just like meeting Cameron for the first time, walking on the beach, bare feet, and Cameron's just making comments about the sand like running through his toes and like how many pieces of sand there is and all this stuff. It's like you cannot get those next level conversations anywhere else. That's where Cameron explained to me, kind of like what Mitchell was describing about how the human being is like a robot. And what me and Mitchell were just talking about this morning, you guys had a party last night, right? And you're talking about how at like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., that's when the real information starts coming out. The first thing that came into my head was a gin event. Literally us sitting around a fireplace in a lobby, the last gin event, and Avery just being passed out like this because it's 5 a.m. in the morning, right?
And then somebody would say something and he'd be like, and then he'd start talking about something.
It seemed like he was here the whole time. Yeah. It's like you can't get that anywhere else. And you get that basically in terms of the benefit that you get out of it versus the cost. It's like free to have the most life-changing event in your life.
The cost is negligible.
Yeah.
I mean, now to us, it's like, it's nothing. But I mean, even in reality, even if you're in a place where you're not making a lot of money, what else can you spend money on that's going to make a difference? in your life.
Yeah, I remember that first event. I really was like, oh man, this is gonna be tough to like get there, and but I'm gonna stay in the hotel and like I'll figure it out, right? And then it totally, in the next 3
And then
months,
because of
everything
that,
opened up.
you made more money than you'd ever made.
Exactly.
And Mayor,
Just
look at
because of
Mayor's
the
story.
relationships you made there and the
Remember Mayor's story of like he got into like a car accident
yeah.
and it wasn't even in his car and he got the money from insurance and he's supposed to give that to that person, but he
He's
didn't.
like
He
this
fucking went to
awkward
the gym
guy
site.
from Iran who never talked to a girl before, and now he's like driving a Benz. Like you should see the new place he's moving into. He's like showing me pictures.
Oh, awesome.
I mean, that's within 2 years,
Fuck
right?
yeah.
And he even had like a 6-month period where he fucked off and was like, "Fuck all this stuff. I'm gonna go pursue my own happiness," and then totally crashed and was like, okay, you guys are right.
But
I do
the
need to
point
have a real
being-
purpose that matters.
The point being that like he really had to push himself to figure out how to get to the event. His first
Mayor's
event.
one of the most teachable people
Mhm.
that I know. Like you can really push him and he will be self-honest. Drake is like that too, right? Where it's like he wants to change.
Mhm.
Right. So it's like, even if I don't like it, I might not say it right away, but it's like he'll go and he'll push himself. So that's why he's able to do all of that. Sometimes people have to go and experience the thing that they think they want, and that's just called time looping, right? But yeah, the events, man, like
In other words, we'll see you at the event, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
what can I say?
yeah.
Exactly.
After
And
we
it's in
talk, like,
Florida. It's in
after we talk for
Orlando. In
20
case we
minutes.
didn't make that clear, it's in Orlando, which is, for those who are living in some communist dictatorships right now, is like the land of the free.
This
Yeah.
is
So-
100%, dude. Just
And
this.
is everybody dying in the streets?
No, I have not seen a single person die in the streets. Not yet. And it's funny because, like, actually living in Orlando, I've seen so many people just pass out who are like tourists that come here. Like, not this year, obviously, but like in the past, growing up, I'd go to like Disney or Universal or whatever, and I would just see tourists pass out all the time in the streets. But it was like, no big deal, right?
It's because they're so happy.
any of that. It's because they're so happy. No, it's heat exhaustion.
That's the magic of Disney.
Happiest place on earth. Die. No. But what's so funny? Literally just yesterday, I was at one of the springs, not too far from me, and I'm there with like family friends, and actually, I think I'm the family friend of their family, right? But they had family come from like Boston and everything, and they're looking around and they're like, nobody here is afraid of COVID. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Like, they're like, do we need a mask to go to the gift shop? I'm like, do you see anyone? Like, literally no one at all. I could count on one hand.
I gotta say that's interesting because even in Texas, or I'm in Houston, which is maybe, I don't know what the difference is. Even though everything's lifted, there's still a lot of people doing it that they don't have to.
Sure.
So it's it seems like it's kind of different there.
Well, this was like a little bit outside of Orlando, like 30 minutes
Yeah,
outside of
but
Orlando.
maybe you guys have had yeah, that's true. Because when I went out into some of the small towns, it's like nobody.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So
it may just be this city, right?
dude, it's really cool. It's a lot of fun, and it's like my mom's super stoked for the gin event as well. This would be
Oh yeah, we'll get to see your mom. That's awesome.
Yeah, and she's like, so how does this work? Do we get a hotel room? I'm like, well, you can. We're here. It's in our backyard. She's like, no, I want the full experience. I'm gonna get a hotel room.
Definitely.
I'm gonna stay there. I'm like, all right, that's a good move because
Yeah, for anybody who's not clear, stay at the hotel that the event is at. Don't go.
Don't get an
somewhere else. You'll want to
Airbnb.
be there all the
Yeah.
time. You'll just be able to pass out, and then we'll carry you up to your hotel room. Like
exactly.
you don't want to have to try to go home and come back and all that stuff.
Exactly. Even if you've got to split a room at the hotel, just do it.
Yeah, you could share a room with 2 other people or whatever. It's like it's no excuse, and plus that's fun too.
There's
actually.
no excuse.
Yeah. What else can we say? Maybe we should put this into its own little thing. Like
Yeah,
why
this-
we go to Gen events.
Mhm.
This is its own. This is a completely different conversation than what we started with. Should we?
But it's all
wrap it up?
related, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean it's like a separate one. We can make a separate little thing.
Yeah, that was so. Like initially, when I met you guys, you kept bringing up this trifecta of Jin, Techno Tutor, and Destiny. How they're all 3 distinct points, but they're all essential. And then I'm like, God, how do we bridge these things? How do we bridge these things? And I was like, there's got to be some way. And I said, like Self Leaders Club, things like that. But then I saw, oh shit, like that's like this idea of like self-perfection that would imply all those points, hence self-perfected. So the three, you need all three, otherwise.
Self-perfection, or self-perfected, the group is just to bring everybody to these points.
Exactly.
Just so everyone's clear, we're not trying to create our own thing. It's just a way of bringing everybody to these points at your own pace, so to speak, where you can be exposed to all these points. Because if you go to any one point in isolation, you're not really getting the full context. So what we've noticed is that people who come in through self-perfected into Gen Technotutor Destiny, they get results and they accelerate way faster than any other way.
Yeah.
Right. So we see self-perfected more as a responsibility on our part, just to support people understanding these points more than anything else. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it, right? If it wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Because where else are you going to learn about, people in 5 years, clicking a button and orgasming on demand and knowing not to do that, right? And taking the responsibility to instead become a billionaire, change the system and direct that technology so it's best for all.
Yeah.
Simple stuff,
like-
but it's not so common.
The whole world's telling you don't get married. And then they're saying, get an app that gives you an orgasm, when you could literally just get married and have that anytime you want.
Yeah.
Like, it's a no-brainer, guys. Come on.
So,
All right.
so with all that,
Perspective, it's all about getting
Self-perfected
Yeah.
will teach you how to have real orgasms.
visit the website, like
Maybe
the
teach
video.
was the wrong way of saying it, but okay.
How teachable are you?
You want to know the reflection of the magnitude of orgasm that you experience is based off how deep you go in your process.
That's true.
How deep?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In your process, in your personal process and your process with your partner, the deeper you go in your process,
And the deeper you go in your partner.
that will be reflected in the quality of your sex.
That was Mitch's joke quota for like the year, man. I think that's your second joke.
Yeah, man, I don't even know if there's a point of you going to the gym event anymore. You're already accelerated so much.
I've arrived. I am the great data flow. Oh wait, no, that's what I don't want to be. Oh fuck.
Another one? Another joke?
Fuck,
What
dude.
is this?
Holy shit.
Okay, guys, you just saw real time the proof that TechnoTutor works.
I was literally just gonna say, y'all see Technotutor.
Y'all. That's so funny.
Love
Anyways,
it.
what else is there?
That's it.
That's
Cool.
it.
Wrap that shit
Yeah,
up.
the video.
Until next time.
And go to the Gen event.
So
You can sign up
Gen
under my code.
It's in August, so you got plenty
Yeah.
of time.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
August
Exactly.
13th to 15th, I think.
Jerick will put a link below so you can see how to get in.
okay, I'll put a link. There
Do
you
it.
go. So
And if you're not a gym member, just contact me.
Join join under me. I'll
Call
show you
us
the-
for Mitch.
All right, so find us on self-perfected.com or find us on Facebook. Just search self-perfected, you'll see us. Or
Find us
hashtag-
on this video you're watching.
Yeah, also on this video, or if you're on Spotify or Apple, I don't put all the links on there. So just find the YouTube video and
And like it and
Like
subscribe
it.
and comment and then
Yeah,
follow the
download it
link.
then follow the
Feed
links.
the data flow.
Exactly.
to all your
Which-
friends.
Which
Grab
data
every
pro
text.
god?
Your last 20 texts, just shoot the link to all of them as well.
Yeah. Which
that's a
data
great
flow
idea.
god are you supporting?
Yeah.
The evil one? Or the one that actually has your best interest in mind?
Ooh, look at that.
My
Look at that.
beard, hey buddies.
All right, so we'll see you guys in August.
Cool.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
We're gonna see them next